The key scraped in the lock and something felt immediately wrong. I stood frozen in the doorway of my own home, my travel-weary body suddenly alert with tension. The scent hit me first, lavender potpourri and furniture polish, smells that had never belonged in my house. I stepped inside, abandoning my suitcase on the porch, and felt the world tilt beneath my feet. "Daniel?" I called out, my voice bouncing off walls that were now covered in cream-colored damask wallpaper instead of the soft sage paint I had carefully selected. My carefully curated gallery wall of black and white photographs had vanished, replaced by ornate gold-framed paintings of pastoral landscapes. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "Oh, Rachel, you're back early." The voice came from my kitchen, my sleek, minimalist kitchen that I had designed myself. Only it wasn't my kitchen anymore. Evelyn, my mother-in-law, emerged wearing an apron I'd never seen before, wiping her hands on a floral dish towel that definitely wasn't mine. What happened to my house?" I managed to ask, shock making my voice barely audible. Evelyn beamed, gesturing proudly around the transformed space. "I thought I'd surprise you. Daniel mentioned you were always too busy with your design. Clients to properly finish your own home, so I took care of it while you were at that conference in Seattle. Doesn't it look wonderful?" My grandmother's reclaimed wood dining table, the centerpiece of our home that I had lovingly restored, was nowhere to be seen. In its place stood a massive mahogany dining set with carved legs and velvet-upholstered chairs. "Where are my things?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "My dining table? My photographs? Oh, those modern things?" Evelyn waved dismissively. "They're safe in the garage. I thought we should have something more substantial, more family-oriented. Don't worry, I kept the important things." The front door opened behind me, and Daniel walked in, stopping short when he saw me. "Rachel, you're home. I thought you weren't back until tomorrow. Caught an earlier flight," I said, not taking my eyes off the stranger that was my living room. "Daniel, what is going on?" His eyes darted between me and his mother, and I saw guilt flash across his face. "Mom wanted to help while you were away. Surprise you with some improvements." "Improvements?" The word tasted bitter in my mouth. "She completely changed our home without asking me. My grandmother's table is in the garage." Evelyn stepped forward, placing a hand on Daniel's arm. "Now, Rachel, there's no need to be dramatic. I was only trying to help. Daniel thought it was a wonderful idea." I stared at my husband, silently pleading with him to deny it. He ran his hand through his hair, his telltale sign of discomfort. "I didn't think it would be such a big deal," he said quietly. "Mom put a lot of effort into this." In that moment, something cold and hard settled in my chest. This wasn't just about furniture or wallpaper. This was about respect, about boundaries, about my husband choosing his mother over me in our own home. "Evelyn," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "I think you should go home now. Daniel and I need to talk." Her smile faded slightly. "But I made dinner." "Your favorite pot roast, Daniel." "Mom?" Daniel said, finally sensing the gravity of the situation. "Maybe Rachel's right. We can talk tomorrow." Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded. "Of course. I'll just get my purse." As she headed upstairs, to my bedroom, I realized with another wave of shock, I turned to Daniel. "How could you let this happen?" I whispered fiercely. "She was trying to help Rachel. She didn't mean any harm. This is our home, Daniel, mine and yours, not your mother's playground." Before he could respond, Evelyn reappeared, purse in hand. "I'll call you tomorrow, dear," she said to Daniel, ignoring me completely. At the door, she paused. The new curtains are being delivered on Tuesday. I'll bring them by. As the door closed behind her, the silence between Daniel and me felt like a physical presence. I looked around at the alien space that was supposed to be my sanctuary. "If you don't fix this," I said quietly, "and I mean right now, we're going to have a much bigger problem than your mother redecorating our house." I stood in what used to be our bedroom, now transformed into a Victorian-inspired nightmare with heavy drapes and a canopy bed that made the room feel half its original size. Daniel hovered in the doorway, his expression a mix of guilt and defensiveness. "Rachel, I'm sorry. I'll talk to Mom, okay? We'll fix this," he said, his voice pleading. I turned to face him, struggling to contain my emotions. "This isn't just about the house, Daniel. It's about us. It's about your mother constantly overstepping and you allowing it." Daniel's shoulders slumped. "She means well, Rachel. She was just trying to help." "Help?" I laughed bitterly. "Remember our wedding day?" The memory flooded back with painful clarity. Evelyn arriving at the ceremony in an ivory gown so bridal that guests had mistakenly congratulated her. Daniel had brushed it off, saying she didn't realize how inappropriate it was. "She wore white to our wedding, Daniel. White. And you said nothing." He winced. "I know, but she said it was cream and And you believed her?" I cut him off. "Or you were too afraid to confront her, which is worse." Daniel fell silent, and I knew I'd hit the mark. It had always been like this, from the moment we said "I do." Evelyn's constant presence, her little suggestions about how I should keep house, cook, dress. And Daniel, always caught in the middle, never fully taking my side. A knock at the front door interrupted our standoff. My stomach dropped at the familiar sound. 3 sharp raps, imperious and demanding. "That's your mother," I said flatly. Before I could protest, Daniel was already heading downstairs. I followed, my fingernails digging into my palms. Evelyn breezed in, arms laden with shopping bags. "I've brought some more things for the house." "Oh, Rachel, dear, you look tired. Perhaps you should lie down while Daniel and I finish up here." I felt my eye twitch. "Evelyn, this needs to stop. Now." She blinked, the picture of innocence. "Stop what, dear? I'm only trying to help. Isn't that right, Daniel?" Daniel looked between us, visibly torn. "Mom, maybe we should talk about this. Rachel and I—" "Nonsense," Evelyn interrupted, already moving toward the living room. "There's nothing to talk about. Now where shall we put these new throw pillows?" I stepped into her path, blocking her. "Evelyn, listen to me. This is our home, mine and Daniel's, not yours." Her eyes narrowed. "Well, I never—" "Daniel, are you going to let her speak to me like this?" I turned to my husband, silently pleading, with him to stand up to his mother just this once. Daniel swallowed hard. "Mom, Rachel's right." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "We appreciate your help, but nothing," Evelyn snapped. "I'm your mother, Daniel. I know what's best for you, for both of you." Something inside me snapped. "No, you don't. You have no idea what's best for us because you refuse to. See us as adults. We're not children, Evelyn. We don't need your help, and we certainly don't need you redecorating our home without our permission." Evelyn gasped, one hand flying to her pearl necklace. "Well, I never—" "Daniel, are you going to let her speak to me like this?" I held my breath, waiting for Daniel's response. This was it. The moment of truth. Daniel looked at his mother, then at me. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the lifelong habit of deferring to Evelyn battling against his loyalty to me. Finally, he spoke. "Mom, I think you should go home now." Evelyn's jaw dropped. "What?" "Please, Mom, just go home. We'll talk later." As Evelyn gathered her things and stormed out, Slamming the door behind her, I felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. I turned to Daniel, searching his face. "Thank you," I said quietly. He nodded, looking exhausted. "I'm sorry, Rachel. I should have stood up to her sooner." I wanted to believe this was a turning point, that things would be different now. But as I looked around at our transformed home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long, difficult battle. The weeks following our confrontation with Evelyn were blissfully quiet. Daniel and I worked together to restore our home to its former state, hauling my grandmother's table back from the garage, rehanging our photos, and stripping the wallpaper that Evelyn had installed. I dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, we'd turned a corner. I should have known better. It was a Saturday afternoon in late October. The Portland rain tapped steadily against the windows, creating a cozy atmosphere inside our newly reclaimed home. Daniel had gone to pick up groceries, and I was enjoying a rare moment of solitude, sketching designs for a new client. The doorbell rang. I opened it without thinking and felt my heart sink as Evelyn's beaming face came into view. "Surprise!" she chirped, pushing past me into the house. "I thought I'd drop by for a little visit." I forced a smile. "Evelyn, this isn't a good time. Daniel's not even home." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, that's all right. We can have some girl time." Before I could protest, she was in the kitchen, pulling pots and pans from the cupboards. "I'll whip us up a nice lunch. You just relax, dear." I gritted my teeth. "Evelyn, please, I appreciate the offer, but—" "Nonsense," she interrupted. "It's no trouble at all. Now, where do you keep your good china?" As she rummaged through my cabinets, I felt my patience wearing thin. "Evelyn, stop. This is my home, and I didn't invite you over." She turned to me, her eyes narrowing. "I'm family, Rachel. I don't need an invitation." "Yes, you do," I insisted. "You can't just barge in here whenever you feel like it." Evelyn's face hardened. "I'm only trying to help. You should be grateful." "Grateful?" I scoffed. "For what? For invading my privacy? For disrespecting my boundaries?" She gasped, clutching her chest dramatically. "How dare you? After everything I've done for you and Daniel." "Everything you've done?" I felt my voice rising. "You mean like wearing ivory to our wedding? Or redecorating our house without permission?" Evelyn's eyes flashed. "I was trying to make things better. This house was a disaster before I stepped in." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "Evelyn, I need you to listen to me. This behavior has to stop. You can't keep interfering in our lives like this." She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Interfering? I'm looking out for my son's best interests. Someone has to, since you clearly can't." That was the last straw. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. Evelyn blinked, taken aback. "Excuse me?" I said, "Get out, now." For a moment, she just stared at me. Then her face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little—" The front door opened, and Daniel walked in, freezing at the scene before him. "What's going on?" Evelyn immediately burst into tears. "Oh, Daniel, your wife is being so cruel to me. I only wanted to help and she's throwing me out." Daniel looked between us, confusion and distress evident on his face. "Rachel, what—" I cut him off. "Your mother showed up uninvited and refused to leave when I asked her to." Evelyn sniffled dramatically. "I just wanted to spend time with my family. Is that so wrong?" Daniel ran a hand through his hair, clearly torn. "Mom, maybe now isn't the best time. Why don't I call you later?" Evelyn's tears dried up instantly, replaced by a look of triumph. "Of course, dear. I'll go. But remember, I'm always here for you." As she swept out the door, I turned to Daniel, my anger barely contained. "This has to stop, Daniel. We need to set some serious boundaries with your mother." He sighed heavily. I know. But she's my mom, Rachel. What am I supposed to do? I stared at him, disbelief and disappointment washing over me. You're supposed to support me, your wife. You're supposed to stand up to her when she oversteps. Don't you see that? Before he could respond, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I knew without asking that it was Evelyn. In that moment, I realized with a sinking heart that this battle was far from over. And worse, I might be fighting it alone. The tension in our house had become unbearable. Daniel and I barely spoke, the silence between us filled with unspoken accusations and resentment. I knew something had to give, and soon. It was a crisp November morning when I made my decision. I couldn't live like this anymore. I had to confront Evelyn once and for all. I drove to her house in the West Hills, my hands shaking on the steering wheel as I pulled into the circular driveway. As I approached the door, I saw Walter, my father-in-law, leaving for his golf game. He gave me a sad, knowing look as he passed by. It struck me then how rarely I saw him smile these days. Evelyn answered the door in her silk robe, surprise flickering across her face. Rachel, what are you doing here so early? I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. We need to talk, Evelyn. Now. She followed me into the living room, her eyes narrowing. If this is about the other day, I think you owe me an apology. I whirled around to face her. An apology? You're the one who needs to apologize, Evelyn. For years of manipulation, for constantly undermining my marriage, for treating me like I'm not good enough for your precious son. Evelyn's face hardened. How dare you come into my home and speak to me like this? I've only ever wanted what's best for Daniel. No, I shot back. You've only ever wanted what's best for you. You can't stand the idea of Daniel having a life that doesn't revolve around you. She gasped, her hand flying to her chest. That's ridiculous. Everything I do is for my family. I laughed bitterly. Family? Is that what you call it when you show up uninvited, rearrange our home, and constantly criticize everything I do? Evelyn's eyes flashed dangerously. I'm his mother. I have every right. No, you don't, I interrupted. You have no right to interfere in our marriage. No right to make me feel like an outsider in my own home. She stepped closer, her voice low and menacing. Listen here, you ungrateful little brat. Daniel was fine before you came along. He doesn't need you. He has me. Something inside me snapped. That's exactly the problem, Evelyn. He's a grown man, not a little boy. He doesn't need you controlling his life. Evelyn's face contorted with rage. You think you can come between us? I raised him. I know what he needs better than anyone. What he needs is a mother who respects his choices and his marriage, I retorted. Not someone who treats him like a possession. She raised her hand, and for a moment I thought she might actually strike me. Instead, she pointed at the door. Get out of my house. Now. I stood my ground. Not until you understand that this has to stop. The constant interference, the manipulation, all of it. Evelyn's laugh was cold and cruel. Or what? You'll leave him? Go ahead. He'll always choose me over you. Her words hit me like a physical blow because deep down, I feared she might be right. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This isn't over, Evelyn. I won't let you destroy my marriage. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of a framed photo on the mantel. It was Daniel as a child, smiling brightly with Evelyn's arms wrapped possessively around him. The sight made my stomach churn. I walked out of Evelyn's house, my mind reeling. I knew I had just thrown down the gauntlet, and there was no going back now. The war was on, and I had to be prepared for whatever Evelyn might do next. As I drove home, a sense of resolve settled over me. I would fight for my marriage, for my home, for the life Daniel and I had built together. And if Evelyn thought I would back down easily, she was in for a rude awakening. because this time I was ready to play her game and win. I paced our living room, rehearsing the conversation I needed to have with Daniel. My confrontation with Evelyn had left me raw and determined. It was time for Daniel to choose, his mother or our marriage. When he walked through the door, I steeled myself. "Daniel, we need to talk." He sighed, dropping his laptop bag. "Rachel, can't this wait? I've had a long day." "No," I said firmly. "It can't. This is about us, about our future." Daniel's shoulders slumped as he sat on the couch. "What's wrong now?" I took a deep breath. "I went to see your mother today." His head snapped up. "You did what?" "I had to, Daniel. Things couldn't go on like this. I told her she needs to stop interfering in our lives." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his face a mix of frustration and anxiety. "Rachel, you shouldn't have done that. You know how Mom gets." "That's exactly the problem," I exclaimed. "You always defend her, no matter what she does. When are you going to stand up for me? For us?" He stood up, pacing the room. "What do you want me to do? She's my mother." "And I'm your wife," I shot back. "Your mother told me you don't need me, that you'll always choose her over me. Is she right, Daniel?" The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel's hesitation felt like a knife to my heart. "I can't believe this," I whispered. "After everything we've been through, you still can't choose me over her." Just then, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face paling. "It's Mom. She says she's coming over." Panic rose in my chest. "No, absolutely not. I can't deal with her right now." Daniel looked torn. "She's upset, Rachel. I can't just turn her away." I felt something inside me break. "If she comes here, I'm leaving. I mean it, Daniel." He stared at me, disbelief etched on his face. "You can't be serious." "I am," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I won't be disrespected in my own home anymore. It's time for you to make a choice." The doorbell rang, its cheerful chime a stark contrast to the tension in the room. Daniel looked from me to the door, indecision written all over his face. "Daniel," I pleaded one last time. "Please." He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then moved toward the door. My heart sank as I watched him reach for the handle. In that moment, I made my decision. I rushed upstairs, threw some clothes into a suitcase, and grabbed my laptop. As I came back down, I could hear Evelyn's voice, shrill and angry, filling the house. Daniel's eyes widened when he saw my suitcase. "Rachel, wait." But I was already heading for the door. "I have a client meeting in Seattle tomorrow. I'm leaving early. Don't try to contact me." Evelyn appeared in the hallway, her face triumphant. "Running away, are we? I told you, Daniel, she doesn't have what it takes." I paused at the door. I turned to face them both. "No, Evelyn, I'm not running away. I'm giving your son a chance to figure out what he really wants." "And Daniel," I said, meeting his eyes, "when I get back, you better have made your choice, because I won't live like this anymore." With that, I walked out, leaving a stunned silence behind me. As I drove away, tears streaming down my face, I wondered if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life or the first step toward saving myself. Either way, I knew things would never be the same again. The rental car pulled up to our house 3 days later, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. After cooling off at a small bed and breakfast in Cannon Beach, I was both eager and terrified to see what awaited me. Daniel hadn't called once during my time away, and I didn't know if that was a good sign or a terrible one. As I approached the front door, I noticed something off. The curtains were different, heavy floral patterns that I would never choose. My key stuck in the lock, and when I finally got the door open, I froze in shock. Our home had been completely transformed. Gone were our modern furnishings, replaced by stuffy antiques and gaudy decorations. The walls, once a soothing gray, were now covered in busy wallpaper. "Daniel?" I called out, my voice echoing in the unfamiliar space. "In here, dear," Evelyn's voice answered from the kitchen. I stormed in, fury building with each step. Evelyn stood at the counter, wearing an apron and looking perfectly at home. "What have you done?" I demanded. She smiled, a picture of innocence. "Oh, Rachel, welcome home. Do you like the changes? I thought it was time this place had a woman's touch." "A woman's touch?" I sputtered. "This is my home, Evelyn. Where's Daniel?" "He's at work, of course," she replied, waving a hand dismissively. "Now, why don't you go freshen up while I finish dinner?" I stared at her, disbelief warring with rage. "You need to leave. Now." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "I don't think so, dear. You see, while you were gone, Daniel and I had a long talk. He agrees that I should move in to help out." "Move in?" I felt like I was in a nightmare. "That's impossible. Daniel would never agree to that." She smirked, pulling an envelope from her pocket. "Oh, but he did. In fact, he signed over half the house to me for safekeeping, you understand?" I snatched the paper from her hand, my eyes scanning the legal document. There it was, in black and white. Daniel had given Evelyn partial ownership of our home. "This can't be legal," I whispered. "Oh, it's perfectly legal," Evelyn gloated. "And there's nothing you can do about it." In that moment, something inside me snapped. I grabbed my phone and dialed Daniel's number. "Rachel," he answered, sounding surprised. "Get home now," I growled, hanging up before he could respond. I turned back to Evelyn, who was watching me with a smug expression. "This isn't over." "Oh, I think it is," she replied. "Face it, Rachel. You've lost. Daniel will always choose me." I was about to retort when the front door opened. Daniel walked in, his face pale as he took in the scene. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between Evelyn and me. "Your mother says you signed over half our house to her," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Please tell me that's not true." Daniel's silence was all the confirmation I needed. "How could you?" I whispered, feeling tears prick my eyes. "Rachel, I can explain," he started, but I cut him off. "Explain what? That you betrayed me? That you let your mother take over our home?" Evelyn stepped forward, placing a hand on Daniel's arm. "Now, dear, don't be dramatic. We're all family here." I laughed bitterly. "Family? Is that what you call this?" Daniel looked torn, his gaze shifting between his mother and me. I thought this would make things easier." "Easier?" I echoed in disbelief. "How is this easier?" Evelyn smiled triumphantly. "See, Daniel? I told you she wouldn't understand. She's never appreciated everything we do for her." Something inside me hardened. I looked at Daniel, really looked at him, and saw a man I no longer recognized. "I want a divorce," I said quietly. The room fell silent. Daniel's face drained of color, while Evelyn's eyes gleamed with victory. "Rachel, please," Daniel began, but I held up a hand. "No, I'm done. I won't live like this anymore." I turned to Evelyn. "You wanted him? You can have him. But this isn't over, not by a long shot." As I walked out of the house that was no longer my home, I felt a strange mix of despair and determination. I had lost everything, but in that loss, I found a resolve I never knew I had. This was war, and I was ready to fight. I sat in Zoe's office, my hands shaking as I clutched a manila folder. My friend and lawyer looked at me with a mix of concern and determination. "Are you sure about this, Rachel?" Zoe asked, her voice gentle but firm. I nodded, my jaw set. "I'm sure. It's time to end this once and for all." Zoe picked up her phone. "I'll set up the meeting. Are you ready to face them?" "I have to be," I replied, steeling myself for what was to come. 2 days later, I found myself sitting across from Daniel, Evelyn, and Walter in a conference room. The tension was palpable, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Evelyn glared at me, her eyes cold. "What's the meaning of this, Rachel? Haven't you caused enough trouble?" I ignored her, turning to Zoe. She nodded, then addressed the room. "We're here today because my client, Rachel Wilson, has evidence of fraudulent activity regarding the transfer of property." Daniel's head snapped up. "What? That's impossible. I signed those papers myself." "Under duress," I interjected, my voice steady. "And with false information." Evelyn scoffed. "This is ridiculous. Walter, tell them how absurd this is." But Walter remained silent, his eyes fixed on the table. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he knew more than he was letting. Zoe continued. "We have reason to believe that Mrs. Wilson misrepresented her financial situation to influence Daniel's decision. Furthermore, we have evidence of other improprieties." Evelyn's face paled. "What are you talking about?" I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "I know about Victor, Evelyn." The room fell silent. Daniel looked bewildered, while Walter's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock. "What?" Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I pulled out a stack of photos from the manila folder, spreading them across the table. They showed Evelyn, with Victor Hayes in various compromising positions. Walter's face crumpled as he looked at the photos. "Evelyn, how could you?" Evelyn's composure cracked. "It's not what it looks like. Walter, please." But Walter was already standing, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I can't believe this. All these years." Daniel stared at the photos, then at his mother. "Mom, is this true?" Evelyn's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal. "Daniel, sweetie, you don't understand. Your father, Don't. You dare blame this on me," Walter interrupted, his voice trembling with anger. "I've put up with your manipulation for years, but this is the last straw." I watched as the family I had once been a part of imploded before my eyes. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part ached for the pain I saw on their faces. Daniel turned to me, his eyes filled with confusion and hurt. "Rachel, why didn't you tell me?" "Would you have believed me?" I asked softly. "You never took my side before." He flinched as if I'd slapped him. I'm so sorry. I had no idea." Evelyn suddenly stood up, her chair toppling over. "This is all your fault," she screamed at me. "You've ruined everything." She lunged across the table, her hands outstretched as if to strangle me. I recoiled, but before she could reach me, Walter grabbed her arm. "That's enough, Evelyn," he said, his voice cold. "It's over." As security escorted a hysterical Evelyn from the room, I felt a strange mix of emotions wash over me. Relief, sadness, anger, and a glimmer of hope. Daniel reached out, his hand hovering over mine. "Rachel, I don't know what to say." I pulled my hand away, my heart heavy. "There's nothing to say, Daniel. It's too late." As I walked out of the conference room, I realized that this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one where I would finally put myself first. 6 months after the explosive revelation, I stood on the steps of the courthouse, my heart pounding. Today was the final hearing for both divorces, mine from Daniel and Walter's from Evelyn. The air was thick with tension as we all filed into the courtroom. As the judge entered, I caught sight of Evelyn. She looked smaller somehow, her once immaculate appearance now disheveled. Daniel sat beside her, his eyes darting nervously between his mother and me. Walter sat alone, his face a mask of quiet determination. The proceedings began, and I listened as Zoe presented our case. She detailed Evelyn's manipulation, the fraudulent property transfer, and the affair. With each word, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. When it was Evelyn's turn to speak, she launched into a tirade. "This is all a misunderstanding. I only wanted what was best for my family. Rachel never understood our bond. She tried to come between us." The judge silenced her with a stern look. "Mrs. Wilson, the evidence against you is overwhelming. Your actions were not only manipulative, but illegal." I watched as the color drained from Evelyn's face. For the first time, I saw her for what she truly was, a scared, insecure woman who had spent her life controlling others to feel powerful. The judge continued, "In light of the evidence, I'm ruling in favor of Mrs. Rachel Wilson. The property transfer is nullified, and Mrs. Evelyn Wilson will be required to pay damages for her fraudulent actions." A collective gasp filled the room. I felt a surge of vindication, but it was tempered by a deep sadness for the family that had been torn apart. As we filed out of the courtroom, Daniel approached me. "Rachel, I'm so sorry. For everything. I should have stood up to my mother. I should have believed in us." I looked at him, seeing the regret in his eyes. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to go back to the way things were, but I knew that wasn't possible. "I'm sorry too, Daniel," I said softly, "but we can't go back. It's time for both of us to move forward." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. As he walked away, I felt a chapter of my life closing. Walter approached next, looking years older than when I'd first met him. "Rachel, I want to thank you. If it weren't for you, I might never have known the truth. I've wasted so many years, but now I have a chance to live the life I want." I squeezed his hand, feeling a kinship with this man who had also been a victim of Evelyn's manipulation. "You deserve happiness, Walter. I hope you find it." As I turned to leave, I saw Evelyn standing alone, her face a mixture of anger and despair. For a moment, our eyes met. I expected to feel triumph or anger, but instead, I felt pity. Evelyn had lost everything: her husband, her son's trust, her power. In the end, her manipulations had cost her everything she held dear. I walked out of the courthouse, feeling the warm spring sun on my face. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. My new apartment was smaller than the house I had shared with Daniel, but it was mine, every inch decorated according to my taste, without compromise or interference. As I arranged the last of my photographs on the wall, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. Evelyn had tried to erase me from Daniel's life by changing our home. In the end, her actions had freed me to create a space that was truly mine. A week after the court case, I found myself driving back to the West Hills with a peculiar mix of emotions. In the trunk of my car were several boxes and bags filled with carefully selected items. I had spent days planning this moment, channeling all my interior design expertise into what I was about to do. Walter had called me the day before. "She's gone to her sister's for the weekend," he'd said, his voice carrying a hint of conspiracy. "If you still want to do this, now's the time." I pulled into the circular driveway of the colonial mansion that had always intimidated me. Walter was waiting on the porch, a tentative smile on his face. He helped me carry the boxes inside. "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" he asked, setting down the last box. "You don't owe us anything, Rachel." I looked around the grand foyer with its imposing chandelier and ornate furniture, the epitome of Evelyn's controlling personality, crystallized in interior design choices. "I'm sure," I said. "Consider it my parting gift." We worked through the day, transforming Evelyn's sacred space, her formal living room. Out went the heavy drapes that had kept the room in permanent shadow. Down came the forbidding portraits of ancestors who seemed to judge everyone who entered. Away went the plastic-covered furniture that had never known comfort. In their place, I installed light, gauzy curtains that let the spring sunshine pour in. I arranged comfortable, inviting furniture in a conversational layout rather than Evelyn's formal museum-like arrangement. On the walls went Walter's photography, beautiful landscapes he'd captured over the years but had never been allowed to display. The centerpiece of the room was the handcrafted bookshelf I commissioned from a local artisan, made from the same reclaimed wood as my grandmother's table. On it, I arranged Walter's collection of first-edition novels that Evelyn had banished to the basement as too shabby for her perfect home. By Sunday evening, the transformation was complete. The room breathed with light and warmth, inviting people in rather than holding them at a distance. "It's perfect," Walter said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's like I can finally breathe in my own home." I patted his hand. "That was the idea." "Evelyn will be back tomorrow afternoon," he reminded me. I nodded. "I know, I'd like to be here, if that's okay." The next day, I sat in Walter's new living room, nervously waiting. At precisely 3 o'clock, I heard the key in the lock and Walter greeting Evelyn in the foyer. Her voice carried that familiar, imperious tone, asking why he hadn't picked her up from her sister's as planned. Then I heard her steps falter as she approached the living room. A sharp intake of breath. "Walter! What happened to my living room?" Her voice was shrill with shock. I stood up as she came into view. Her eyes widened when she saw me, then narrowed, as she took in the transformed space. "You," she hissed. "How dare you come into my home and—" "I invited her," Walter said firmly, stepping beside me. "I wanted a change." Evelyn's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "But my antiques, my drapes, are in storage," I said calmly. "Everything is safe, just like you said my things were when you put them in the garage." Understanding dawned on her face. "This is revenge." I shook my head. "No, Evelyn. This is freedom, for both you and Walter." Her eyes darted around the room, taking in every change, every item that represented her loss of control. "The bookshelf is made from the same wood as my grandmother's table," I explained. "The one you put in the garage. I thought it was fitting." "You've ruined everything," she whispered, but the fight seemed to be draining out of her. "Actually," Walter said, "I think she's fixed everything. This feels like a home now, not a museum." Evelyn sank onto one of the new, comfortable chairs, seemingly unable to stand any longer. For a long moment, she was silent, her eyes moving, from object to object. Then, unexpectedly, a single tear rolled down her cheek. "It's beautiful," she admitted, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. In that moment, looking at Evelyn's defeated posture, I felt no triumph, no vindication. Only a profound sadness for a woman who had spent her entire life trying to control others because she couldn't control herself. "The difference between us, Evelyn," I said gently, "is that I created this space for Walter to enjoy, not to hurt you. That's something you never understood." I gathered my purse and headed for the door. My work here was done. "Rachel," Walter called after me. "Thank you." I nodded, a small smile on my lips. "Goodbye, Walter. Good luck." As I drove away from the Wilson house for the final time, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. In redecorating Evelyn's sacred space, I hadn't sought revenge. I had offered liberation, not just for Walter, but for myself. 3 months later, I stood in the doorway of my new design studio in downtown Portland. The morning sun streamed through the windows, highlighting the framed magazine cover on the wall, Phoenix Rising, designer Rachel Wilson rebuilds after personal disaster. The article detailed my journey from losing my home to founding my own successful design firm. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Lunch today? Have news about you-know-who." I smiled, typing back a quick, "Yes, 1 p.m. at Marcel's." Later, over. "Sandwiches." Zoe leaned forward with the gleam in her eye that I'd come to recognize as her gossip face. "Walter filed for divorce," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "I thought they were already divorced." "They are. He's divorcing her sister now." She grinned at my shocked expression. "Turns out they've been having an affair for years. Quite the family tradition." I shook my head, surprised to find that I felt nothing. No anger, no shock, not even satisfaction. Evelyn and her dramas seemed to belong to another lifetime. "Good for Walter," I said finally. "What about Daniel?" Zoe's expression softened. "He asked about you. Said he's in therapy now, working on his boundary issues. His words, not mine." I nodded, appreciating the information but feeling no pull to reconnect. The Daniel chapter of my life was closed. That evening, I walked through my apartment, running my fingers along the smooth surface of my grandmother's restored table, now the centerpiece of my dining area. The walls were filled with my photographs, the furniture, arranged exactly as I wanted. Everything in its place, chosen by me, for me. I sat at my table with a glass of wine and my sketchbook, working on designs for a new client. As the sunset painted my walls with golden light, I realized I was happy, truly happy, perhaps for the first time in years. In trying to erase me, Evelyn had inadvertently helped me find myself. In attempting to control everyone around her, she had lost everything. And in learning to fight back, I had discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. The irony wasn't lost on me. My mother-in-law had redecorated my house while I was away, and what I changed in her home had indeed left her speechless. But the real transformation wasn't in the furniture or the paint colors. It was in me. I raised my glass in a silent toast to new beginnings, to hard-won freedom, and to the power of creating spaces that reflect our true selves, both in our homes and in our lives. The apartment felt empty without my grandmother's painting above, the fireplace. I'd left it at the house in my hasty departure, and it was one of the few things I genuinely missed. The rest I could replace, rebuild, reimagine. But that watercolor landscape of the Oregon coast at sunset was irreplaceable. Grandma Helen had painted it the summer before she died, when we'd taken that last trip to Cannon Beach together. Setting down my coffee mug, I made a decision. I would get it back. "You want to do what?" Zoe looked at me like I'd suggested skydiving without a parachute. We were sitting at our usual corner table at Marlowe's Cafe, the Thursday morning crowd buzzing around us. "I need to get some things from the house," I repeated. "Personal items that have sentimental value." Zoe frowned. "The court already awarded you your personal property. We can have the sheriff accompany you." "No," I shook my head. "I don't want this to be a legal thing. I just want to talk to Daniel, person to person." "After everything that's happened?" Zoe stirred her latte vigorously. "Rachel, I'm saying this as your friend, not your lawyer. Are you sure that's wise?" I wasn't sure of anything anymore, but I knew I needed closure. The hearing is in 3 days. After that, I don't want to have any reason to see or speak to Daniel or Evelyn ever again. Zoe sighed, recognizing my determined expression. "At least let me come with you." "Actually," I said, "I was thinking of asking Walter to meet me there." Zoe's eyebrows shot up. "Walter? Evelyn's Walter?" "They're separated now," I reminded her. "And he texted me last week. He's staying at the Riverside Suites until things get settled." I hesitated. "He's been really supportive, Zoe. I think he understands better than anyone what it's like to be manipulated by Evelyn." Zoe nodded slowly. "Just be careful, okay? And call me the minute you leave. Promise?" I promised, though I knew. Her concern was unnecessary. Daniel wasn't dangerous, just weak, and that weakness had cost us everything. Walter was waiting in his sensible sedan when I pulled into the driveway of what had once been my home. The sight of the house made my stomach twist. The curtains were still those heavy floral patterns Evelyn had installed, making the place look like a Victorian funeral parlor rather than the bright, airy space I'd designed. "You doing okay?" Walter asked as I approached, his kind eyes crinkling with concern. I nodded. "Thanks for coming. Is Daniel expecting us?" "He knows we're coming." Evelyn's at her weekly bridge game, so we shouldn't run into her. I felt a wave of relief. Facing Daniel would be hard enough without his mother's venomous presence. The front door opened before we could ring the bell. Daniel stood there, looking thinner than I remembered, dark circles under his eyes. For a moment, I felt a pang of something, not quite sympathy, not quite regret, but an echo of the love I'd once felt for him. "Rachel," he said softly. "Dad, come in." The interior was somehow worse than I remembered. Evelyn hadn't just redecorated. She'd attempted to erase every trace of my existence. The walls that had once been a peaceful sage were now covered in burgundy damask wallpaper. The sleek mid-century furniture had been replaced with bulky antiques that made the rooms feel cramped and claustrophobic. "I'm just here for a few personal items," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "It won't take long." Daniel nodded, running a hand through his hair. That same nervous gesture that had once been endearing but now reminded me of his constant indecision. "Take whatever you need. It's still half your house, legally speaking." I wanted to point out that hadn't stopped him from signing it over to his mother, but I bit my tongue. I hadn't come here to fight. "I'll wait down here," Walter said, giving me an encouraging nod. I headed upstairs, hyper-aware of Daniel following at a respectful distance. My heart sank further as I saw what Evelyn had done to our bedroom. The walls were now a cloying shade of lavender. The minimalist platform bed replaced with a four-poster monstrosity draped in heavy fabric. It was impossible to imagine sleeping here. "I know it's a lot," Daniel said, hovering in the doorway. "Mom went a bit overboard." The understatement was so absurd I nearly laughed. "A bit?" I moved to the closet, relieved to find my old storage boxes still stacked neatly in the back corner. I pulled out the one labeled Family Photos, my fingers trembling slightly as I lifted the lid. There it was, nestled between layers of bubble wrap, my grandmother's painting. "I made sure Mom didn't throw anything out," Daniel said, watching me carefully. "I know how much your grandmother's things mean to you." I clutched the painting to my chest, unsure whether to thank him for this small mercy or scream at him for everything else. "I need a few more things from the study." He followed me down the hall to what had once been our shared workspace. Now, it was unrecognizable, transformed into some sort of sewing room, with Evelyn's quilting frame dominating the center. I went straight to the built-in bookcase, scanning the shelves for my leather-bound collection of classic novels, my father's gift for my college graduation. They were gone. "Where are my books?" I asked, a new wave of anger rising. Daniel's face fell. "Mom thought they were taking up too much space. They're in boxes in the garage." Of course they were. I closed my eyes briefly, counting to 10 before I spoke again. "I'd like to get them, please." The garage was stacked with boxes and furniture, all the pieces of our life together that Evelyn had deemed unsuitable. I recognized my mid-century end tables, the Eames-inspired reading chair I'd saved for months to buy, lamps, artwork, books, all discarded like unwanted trash. "I had no idea she'd put so much out here," Daniel said, sounding genuinely shocked. "Rachel, I'm so sorry." "Are you?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "You let her do this, Daniel. You chose her over me, over our marriage, over the life we built together." He flinched as if I'd struck him. "I thought I was doing what was best for everyone," I thought if I just gave her what she wanted, she'd back off and let us live in. Hiss! That's not how manipulators work, Walter said quietly from behind us. I hadn't heard him approach. They never stop taking until there's nothing left to give. Daniel turned to his father, surprise evident on his face. Dad? Walter moved further into the garage, surveying the displaced items of our former life. Your mother's been controlling people our entire marriage. I let it happen because it was easier than fighting. I convinced myself it was just her way of showing love. He picked up a framed photograph of Daniel and me on our wedding day, wiping dust from the glass with his sleeve. I was wrong, and I watched you make the same mistake. The silence that followed was heavy with decades of unspoken truths. I felt like an intruder witnessing a long overdue conversation between father and son. I didn't know what else to do, Daniel finally said, his voice small. She's my mother. And Rachel was your wife, Walter replied gently. Someone who loved you for who you are, not for who she wanted you to be. I turned away, unable to bear the raw emotion on both their faces. I need boxes for my books. I kept my voice businesslike, detached. This wasn't the time or place for the conversation we really needed to have. Daniel seemed to understand. He found some empty containers, and we worked in silence, packing my books and a few other precious items I discovered among the discarded pieces of our life. Walter helped, somehow knowing exactly which things mattered most to me. The hand-woven throw from my trip to Peru, the pottery bowl I'd made in that ceramics class Daniel and I had taken together, the vintage camera that had belonged to my grandfather. After an hour, my car was loaded with the tangible remnants of my marriage. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. The most important pieces were coming with me, the rest I could let go. As I closed the trunk, I heard the unmistakable sound of tires on gravel. A sleek black Lexus pulled into the driveway, Evelyn's car. I thought she was at bridge until 5, I said, panic rising. Walter checked his watch. She's early. Rachel, you should go. But it was too late. Evelyn was already out of her car, her face a mask of fury as she surveyed the scene. My packed car, Walter's presence, Daniel's guilty expression. What is going on here? She demanded, stalking toward us. What is she doing at my house? It's not your house, Mom, Daniel said, his voice firmer than I'd ever heard him speak to her. It's still legally half Rachel's until the hearing. Evelyn's eyes narrowed as she took in the boxes visible through my car windows. You're letting her take things? Those are family heirlooms. They're her personal belongings, Walter interjected, stepping protectively between Evelyn and me. Things that were never yours to begin with. Evelyn ignored him, focusing her rage on Daniel. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? By conspiring with her behind my back? I expected Daniel to crumble under her onslaught, to revert to the apologetic son eager to please his mother. Instead, he straightened his shoulders. They're her things, Mom. I should never have let you move them to the garage in the first place. Evelyn's mouth opened and closed, momentarily speechless at this unexpected defiance. Then her gaze shifted to me, eyes glittering with hatred. This is your doing, she hissed. You turned my son against me. You turned my husband against me. You've destroyed my family. I shook my head, suddenly tired of her drama, her perpetual victimhood. No, Evelyn, you did that all by yourself. Before she could respond, I turned to Daniel. Thank you for letting me get my things. I'll see you at the hearing. To Walter, I added, are you coming, or do you want to stay? The question hung in the air between us. I was offering him an escape, a chance to walk away from Evelyn's manipulation right alongside me. For a moment, I thought he might accept. But Walter shook his head slightly. I need to finish this, he said with a meaningful glance toward Evelyn. But I'll call you later. I nodded, understanding. Some conversations had been postponed for too long already. As I drove away, I watched in my rearview mirror as Evelyn gesticulated wildly, her face contorted with rage. Daniel stood his ground, Walter beside him. For the first time, they looked united. Two men finally standing up to the woman who had controlled them for too long. I felt a strange lightness as the distance between us grew. I had what I came for. Not just my grandmother's painting and my father's books, but something far more valuable. Closure. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment, rearranging books on shelves, straightening picture frames, wiping already clean counters, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from spiraling. The buzzing of my phone startled me. Who would be calling at nearly midnight? Daniel's name flashed on the screen. My finger hovered over the decline button, but curiosity won out. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Rachel." His voice sounded strange, thick, as if he'd been crying. "I'm sorry to call so late. What's wrong?" Despite everything, concern slipped into my voice. Daniel rarely cried. "Everything." He gave a hollow laugh. "Everything's wrong, has been for a long time." There was a pause, then, "Can we talk? In person, I mean. Not about the hearing or the divorce or any of that. Just talk." I hesitated. "Daniel, I don't think—" "Please, Rachel." The desperation in his voice was palpable. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I need to say some things that I should have said a long time ago. Against my better judgment, against Zoe's explicit advice, against every self-protective instinct I'd developed over the past months, I found myself saying, 'Where are you?' The park bench. Our bench. Our bench. The stone bench overlooking the river where he'd proposed, where we'd spent countless Sunday mornings with coffee and the newspaper, where we'd sat in silence after my father's funeral, his hand steady in mine. "Give me 20 minutes, I said, already reaching for my coat. The night was clear and cool, stars visible despite the city lights. I spotted Daniel immediately, his familiar silhouette hunched forward on the bench, elbows on knees, head bowed. He looked up as I approached, his face pale in the moonlight. "You came," he said, as if he couldn't quite believe it. I came. I sat beside him, leaving a careful distance between us. "What's going on, Daniel?" He took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the dark water flowing past. "I moved out of the house today. I'm staying at Jason's for now." This was unexpected. "What about your mother?" "That's kind of why I wanted to talk to you." He turned to face me, his expression more serious than I'd ever seen it. "After you left yesterday, Dad and I had a long conversation with Mom. About everything. The affair, the house, her behavior toward you. She didn't take it well. I could imagine. I'm sorry." "Don't be. It needed to happen." He ran a hand through his hair. "Dad's moving out too. He's getting his own place next week." "Good for him," I said, meaning it. "But why are you telling me this?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Because I owe you an apology. A real one, not the pathetic excuses I've been making." His voice grew stronger, more certain. "I failed you, Rachel. I promised to be your partner, to build a life with you. And then I let my mother tear it all down because I was too much of a coward to stand up to her." The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. This was a different Daniel than the one I'd left, the one who'd always chosen the path of least resistance. "I've started seeing a therapist," he continued, "trying to understand why I let her control me for so long, why I couldn't be the husband you deserved." He gave a sad smile. "Turns out 3 decades of manipulation leaves some pretty deep scars." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to acknowledge the difficulty of breaking free from a parent's unhealthy influence. Another part remembered the pain of standing alone while he chose his mother over me time and again. "I'm not telling you this to change your mind about tomorrow," he said quickly, as if reading my thoughts. "I know it's too late for us. I needed you to know that I understand now. What I did. What I lost." His voice broke on the last word. We sat in silence, watching the moonlight ripple on the water. Finally, I spoke. "Do you remember what you said when you proposed to me? Right here on this bench?" He nodded, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "I said that loving you was the easiest thing I'd ever done, and I wanted to keep doing it for the rest of my life." "The easiest thing," I repeated softly. "But love isn't supposed to be easy, Daniel. It's supposed to be worth fighting for." "I know that now." He reached for my hand, then seemed to think better of it, letting his own fall back to his lap. "For what it's worth, I'm learning to fight. Too late for us, but maybe not too late for me." There was something different about him, a steadiness that hadn't been there before. The Daniel I'd married had been kind and gentle, but malleable, always seeking the path of least conflict. This Daniel seemed stronger, more defined. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I couldn't hate him. Pity him, yes. Mourn what might have been. Absolutely! But hate? No. He stood, shoving his hands in his pockets. "I should let you get home. Big day tomorrow." I nodded, remaining seated. "I'll be there." He took a few steps, then turned back. "Rachel, for what it's worth, I really am sorry. For everything." "I know," I said quietly. And I did. I watched him walk away, his figure gradually swallowed by darkness. When he was gone, I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. There were no tears, no ache in my chest, just a peculiar sense of completion, as if a story that had been left unfinished was finally reaching its conclusion. Morning dawned bright and clear, sunshine streaming through my bedroom window as if the universe was celebrating with me. Today was the day, the final hearing that would officially end my marriage to Daniel and, hopefully, sever any legal ties to Evelyn once and for all. I dressed carefully in a simple navy dress, professional but not severe, and the pearl earrings my mother had given me on my wedding day. "Something to remind you of your strength," she'd said as she'd fastened them to my ears. I needed that reminder today. Zoe met me on the courthouse steps, looking sharp in a tailored pantsuit. "Ready?" she asked, squeezing my arm. "More than ready," I assured her. We climbed the steps together, passing through security and navigating the bustling corridors until we reached the designated courtroom. Walter was already there, sitting alone on a bench outside the doors. "Good morning," he said, standing as we approached. He looked different somehow, lighter, as if a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. "Daniel just called. He and Evelyn are running a bit late." I nodded, not surprised that Evelyn would make a drama of even this final appearance. "How are you doing, Walter?" He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Better than I have in years, actually. I signed a lease on an apartment yesterday. First place that's been just mine since college." "That's wonderful," I said, meaning it. If any good had come from this mess, it was Walter's liberation from Evelyn's control. The courthouse doors swung open, and Daniel hurried in, looking flustered. "Sorry," he said, slightly out of breath. Traffic was terrible. I noticed he was alone. "Where's Evelyn?" Daniel and Walter exchanged a look. "She's not coming," Daniel said. She decided to contest the property settlement at the last minute. Her lawyer filed for a continuance." Zoe frowned. "On what grounds?" She's claiming Dad transferred assets without her knowledge and that you— He glanced apologetically at me, exerted undue influence over both of us. Of course she was. Even now, Evelyn couldn't resist one final attempt to exert control, to drag out the process, to make us all dance to her tune just a little longer. I felt a flash of the old anger, the frustration that had colored so much of the past year. Then, unexpectedly, it faded, replaced by something like pity. Evelyn was fighting, because fighting was all she knew how to do. She couldn't bear to lose, even when the game was already over. "It won't work," Zoe said confidently. "We have documentation of everything. The judge won't grant a continuance on such flimsy grounds." She was right. When we entered the courtroom and the proceedings began, the judge listened to Evelyn's lawyer with thinly veiled impatience, then denied the motion for continuance in less than 5 minutes. "The evidence in this case is clear," she said, shuffling through the papers before her. "The court finds that Mrs. Evelyn Wilson did knowingly and intentionally manipulate Mr. Daniel Wilson into signing over property that was not solely his to give. Furthermore, the court finds that Mrs. Evelyn Wilson's actions constitute a pattern of emotional manipulation and boundary violations that contributed significantly to the breakdown of the marriage between Mr. Daniel Wilson and Mrs. Rachel Wilson." She looked up, her gaze direct and unflinching. "In light of these findings, the court grants the petition for divorce and awards Mrs. Rachel Wilson full ownership of the disputed property at 1542 Maple Avenue, as well as damages in the amount of $50,000 to compensate for emotional distress and wrongful dispossession." I sat stunned, barely hearing the rest of the judgment. The house was mine, completely mine, and Evelyn would have to pay me damages. "Additionally," the judge continued, "the court orders that Mrs. Evelyn Wilson is to have no contact with Mrs. Rachel Wilson for a period of not less than 1 year, after which time the parties may revisit the necessity of this order. A restraining order." I hadn't even asked for that, but Zoe, clever Zoe, must have included it in our petition. "That's it?" Daniel asked as the judge concluded the proceedings. "It's over?" "It's over," Zoe confirmed, gathering her papers. "Congratulations, Rachel. You won." Won. Such a strange word for the end of a marriage, the conclusion of a chapter that had once held so much promise. Yet, as we filed out of the courtroom into the bright spring morning, I did feel victorious, not over Daniel, but over the fear and self-doubt that had plagued me for so long. We stood on the courthouse steps, an odd quartet. Me, Daniel, Walter, and Zoe, linked by the legal proceedings that had just concluded but already moving towards separate futures. "What will you do now?" Walter asked me. I smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. "First, I'm going to redecorate my house, every inch of it. Then I'm going to focus on growing my design business." Daniel nodded, a hint of pride in his eyes. "You'll be amazing. You always are." There was an awkward moment as we all stood there, none of us quite knowing how to say goodbye. "Well," Zoe finally said, checking her watch, "I have another appointment. Rachel, I'll call you later to go over the final paperwork." She hugged me quickly, then descended the steps, leaving me with the 2 Wilson men. "I should go too," Daniel said. "Good luck with everything, Rachel." "You too, Daniel." He hesitated, then leaned in and brushed a kiss against my cheek. "Be happy," he whispered. Then he was gone, jogging down the steps toward the parking garage. Walter remained, his kind eyes studying my face. "Are you really okay?" I considered the question seriously. Was I okay? 6 months ago, I thought my life was over. I'd lost my home, my marriage, my sense of security. I'd been betrayed by the person I trusted most. I'd faced Evelyn's wrath and manipulation. And I'd survived, more than survived. I'd fought back and won. "Yes," I said, realizing it was true. "I really am okay." Walter smiled, reaching into his pocket. I have something for you. A housewarming gift of sorts. He handed me a small velvet. Asuwanan was a key, old-fashioned, ornate, beautiful. It's the key to the antique secretary desk in the study, he explained. The one with all the little drawers and cubbyholes. Evelyn never knew, but I hollowed out a false bottom in the middle drawer years ago. A hiding place for things I didn't want her to find. I looked at him, puzzled. I don't understand. The desk is still in the house, your house now, he said. In the false bottom, you'll find a notebook. I've been keeping track of all of Evelyn's financial maneuvers for the past 20 years, including some that the IRS would be very interested to learn about. My eyes widened. Walter, he held up a hand. I'm not suggesting you use it for blackmail. That's not who you are. But if Evelyn ever tries to contest today's judgment, if she ever bothers you again... He shrugged. Let's just say, it's insurance. I closed my fingers around the key, oddly touched by this gesture from the man who had once been my father-in-law. Thank you. He nodded, then glanced at his watch. I'd better go. I'm meeting the realtor to look at that apartment in an hour. On impulse, I hugged him. After a startled moment, his arms came around me in a brief, warm embrace. Take care of yourself, Rachel, he said as he pulled away. And if you ever need anything... I know where to find you, I finished with a smile. I watched him walk away, this quiet man who had found his courage late in life, but found it nonetheless. Then I turned and headed toward my own car, the key a comforting weight in my palm. As I drove toward the house, my house, I felt a sense of anticipation building. Not just for the renovations I would begin, stripping away every trace of Evelyn's heavy-handed decorating, but for all the possibilities that stretched before me. I was 32 years old. I had my health, my talent, my freedom. I had friends who had stood by me through the darkest period of my life. I had a house that was now truly mine, to shape and design according to my own vision. And I had myself, stronger, more resilient, more certain of my own worth than I had ever been. The future stretched before me, as blank and full of potential, as the walls I would soon repaint, the rooms I would reimagine. For the first time in a very long time, I couldn't wait to see what came next. The first night in my reclaimed house felt surreal. I wandered from room to room, mentally cataloging everything that needed to change. Evelyn's heavy drapes would be the first to go, followed by the oppressive wallpaper and the hulking furniture that made the space feel smaller than it was. I wanted light, air, simplicity, all the elements of the home Daniel and I had originally created together. Standing in what had once been our bedroom, I made a decision. I wouldn't sleep there, not tonight. The four-poster monstrosity Evelyn had installed seemed to mock me with its excessive ornamentation. Instead, I made up the daybed in the guest room, a space that had somehow escaped the worst of her redecorating frenzy. Sleep came fitfully, my dreams filled with courtrooms and keys and Evelyn's accusing face. I woke at dawn, momentarily disoriented by the familiar yet strange surroundings. Then the events of the previous day came flooding back. The courtroom, the judge's ruling, Walter's parting gift. The key. I made coffee first, a small ritual of normalcy in the midst of all the change. Then, cradling the steaming mug, I went to find the antique secretary desk Walter had mentioned. It sat in the corner of what had been our shared office, its rich mahogany surface gleaming in the morning light. Evelyn had apparently appreciated this piece enough to leave it untouched. Setting down my coffee, I retrieved the velvet box from my purse and extracted the ornate key. It fit perfectly into the lock on the middle drawer, turning with a satisfying click. Inside were the standard office supplies, pens, notepads, paper clips, all arranged with Evelyn's characteristic precision. I ran my fingers along the bottom of the drawer, searching for any irregularity that might indicate a false bottom. Nothing. I I removed the contents, examining the drawer more carefully. Still nothing obvious. Then I noticed it. The depth of the drawer seemed slightly less than it should be, given the exterior dimensions of the desk. I pressed firmly on various spots along the bottom until I heard a faint sound. A tiny spring. Mechanism releasing. The false bottom popped up slightly at one corner. Carefully, I lifted the panel to reveal a shallow hidden compartment beneath. Inside lay a slim leather-bound notebook, its pages yellowed with age. I lifted it out with reverent hands, aware that I was holding 20 years of Walter's silent resistance against Evelyn's tyranny. Opening the cover, I found Walter's neat architectural handwriting filling page after page with dates, figures, and brief notations. Some entries were highlighted or marked with asterisks, others accompanied by small handwritten notes in the margins. Tax discrepancy, undisclosed account, questioned source. I wasn't an accountant, but even I could see that Walter had meticulously documented a pattern of financial impropriety spanning decades. Hidden accounts, unreported income, questionable investments, transfers designed to shield assets from taxation. Halfway through, the entries changed, becoming more deliberately focused on Evelyn's separate financial activities. Walter had been building a case, I realized, not for a courtroom necessarily, but for himself. Evidence that he wasn't imagining things, that his wife's manipulations extended beyond the emotional into the concretely illegal. The final pages contained information directly related to our situation, details about how Evelyn had pressured Daniel into signing over the house, notes on conversations Walter had overheard, even copies of text messages between Evelyn and her lawyer discussing strategies to ensure Rachel gets nothing. I closed the notebook, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Validation, certainly. Vindication. But also sadness for Walter, living for years with this secret knowledge, documenting his wife's betrayals in silence rather than confronting them. The doorbell rang, startling me. I hastily returned the notebook to its hiding place, replaced the false bottom, and locked the drawer. Who could be visiting so early? Through the peephole, I saw a delivery person holding a large arrangement of flowers. I opened the door cautiously. "Rachel Wilson?" the young woman asked, consulting her clipboard. "Yes, that's me." "Special, delivery." She handed over the stunning bouquet of white lilies and blue hydrangeas, my favorites. "Have a nice day." I carried the flowers to the kitchen, searching for the card tucked among the blooms. "Congratulations on your fresh start. The house is lucky to have you back. Walter." I smiled, touched by the gesture. Walter Wilson was turning out to be a much better friend than he had been a father-in-law. Setting the flowers on the counter, I made a decision. Today would be day one of reclaiming my space. I pulled out my phone and made 3 calls. First to a contractor I'd worked with on several design projects, then to a painting crew, and finally to a storage company. By noon, I had a team of workers scheduled to begin the transformation the very next day. That accomplished, I decided to tackle one small project immediately, something symbolic to mark this new beginning. I went to the living room, where Evelyn had hung an enormous oil painting of a dreary European landscape above the fireplace. It dominated the room with its heavy gilt frame and dark, oppressive colors. Standing on a chair, I carefully lifted it from its hooks, surprised by its weight. In its place, I hung my grandmother's painting, the delicate watercolor of the Oregon coast that had been my first priority to recover. The difference was startling. Where Evelyn's choice had loomed over the room, mine invited the eye to look closer, to notice the subtle interplay of light and color, the horizon stretching infinitely into possibilities unknown. It was a small change, but seeing it filled me with a sense of accomplishment and anticipation. This was just the beginning. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Celebratory dinner tonight? My treat." I smiled and typed back, "Absolutely. But my treat. I'm feeling generous." 7 p.m. at Mateo's? The rest of the day passed in a flurry of planning and organizing. I created detailed sketches for each room, listed materials needed, researched furniture options. By evening, I had a comprehensive vision for transforming the house back into my sanctuary. Zoe was already at Mateo's when I arrived, sipping a glass of red wine at our favorite corner table. She waved as she spotted me weaving through the crowded restaurant. "Look at you," she exclaimed as I sat down. "You're practically glowing." "Am I?" I laughed, accepting the glass of wine the waiter promptly delivered. "I feel light, like I've set down something heavy I've been carrying for months." "Freedom will do that for you," Zoe said, raising her glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. We ordered linguine for Zoe, grilled salmon for me, and fell into easy conversation about my renovation plans. "So you're really going to live there?" Zoe asked. "I thought you might sell it, make a clean break." I shook my head. That house was my dream long before Evelyn tried to claim it. I designed every inch of it. I'm not giving it up. Zoe nodded, thoughtfully. "What about work? Are you going back to Henderson Design full-time?" "Actually," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice, "I've decided to start my own firm. Small at first, just me and maybe an assistant. I've already got a client list started. People from Henderson who followed me when I was on leave." "Rachel!" Zoe's eyes widened. "That's huge. When did you decide this?" "About..." I checked my watch with a grin. 7 hours ago? "It just feels right, Zoe. New house, new business, new me." She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "I'm so proud of you. After everything you've been through, most people would still be licking their wounds, but you're already building something new." "I had good help," I said, squeezing back. "A pretty amazing lawyer, for one." "The lawyer was good," Zoe agreed with a wink. "But the client was exceptional." Our food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. As we ate, I found myself thinking about the notebook hidden in the desk drawer. I hadn't mentioned it to anyone, not even Zoe. Part of me wondered if I should. She was my lawyer, after all. But another part respected Walter's trust in giving it to me as a private form of insurance. "Earth to Rachel," Zoe said, waving her fork. "You disappeared there for a second." "Sorry," I smiled. "Just thinking about everything that needs doing at the house." "Speaking of," Zoe said, her expression turning more serious. "Have you heard anything from Daniel? Or Evelyn?" I shook my head. "Not since the courthouse. Daniel's staying with his friend Jason, apparently. And Evelyn." I shrugged. "I imagine she's plotting her revenge somewhere." "Well, she can plot all she wants. The restraining order means she can't come within 100 yards of you or the house. Which reminds me," I said, "I should probably install a security system, just in case." Zoe nodded approvingly. "Smart. I wouldn't put it past her to try something, restraining order or not." We finished our meal and split a tiramisu for dessert, the conversation drifting to lighter topics: Zoe's upcoming vacation, a mutual friend's engagement, the latest Netflix series we'd both been watching. It felt wonderfully normal, a welcome respite from the drama that had consumed so much of my life recently. As we walked to our cars afterward, Zoe gave me a tight hug. "Call me if you need anything, okay? Day or night." "I will," I promised. "But I think I'm going to be just fine." The next morning, I woke to the sound of vehicles pulling up outside. My transformation team had arrived, contractors, painters, and the storage company, right on schedule. I greeted them with coffee and pastries from the bakery down the street, then walked them through the house, explaining my vision for each space. "So basically," the head contractor, Miguel, summarized with a grin, "you want us to undo everything that was done in the last 6 months?" "Exactly," I confirmed. Every trace of the Victorian funeral parlor look has to go. The team got to work immediately, starting with the removal of Evelyn's heavy furniture. I watched with satisfaction as the movers carried out the massive four-poster bed, the overstuffed chairs, the dark wood tables with their clawed feet. Each piece that disappeared through the door felt like another weight lifted from my shoulders. By lunchtime, the house was nearly empty, with only the pieces I wanted to keep remaining. My grandmother's table, my reading chair, the secretary desk with its secret compartment. The painters had already begun stripping the wallpaper in the living room, revealing the sage green paint beneath that had been my original choice. I was in the kitchen, sketching ideas for new cabinets, when my phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar number with the local area code. "Rachel Wilson?" I answered. "Rachel, it's Victor Hayes." I nearly dropped the phone. Victor, the man from the photographs, Evelyn's affair partner whose existence had been the final nail in the coffin of her marriage to Walter. "How did you get my number?" I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. "Your website," he said simply. "Look, I know this is unexpected, but I'd like to meet with you. To explain some things. I don't think we have anything to discuss." My tone was cool. Whatever had happened between him and Evelyn was their business, not mine. "It's about Evelyn," he continued, undeterred. "She's planning something. Something you should know about." A chill ran through me. "What do you mean?" "Not over the phone," Victor said, his voice dropping lower. "She might be monitoring my calls. Can you meet me? Today, if possible." Every instinct told me this could be a trap, some elaborate scheme Evelyn had concocted. And yet, if there was even a chance he had legitimate information about a threat. "Where and when?" I asked. 2:00, Portland Coffee House on 5th. I'll be in the back corner booth." "I'll be there," I said. "But Victor, if this is some kind of game..." "It's not," he interrupted. "I'll explain everything when I see you." The call ended, leaving me with a growing sense of unease. Should I call Zoe? Walter? The police? No. I had no evidence of any actual threat, just the cryptic words of a man I'd never met. I decided to go to the meeting but take precautions. I texted Zoe, "Meeting someone at Portland Coffee House, 5th St. 2 p.m. If you don't hear from me by 3, call me. If no answer, call police." Her response was immediate. "Who are you meeting? Want me to come with you?" I hesitated, then typed, "Victor Hayes, Evelyn's friend. Says she's planning something I should know about. I'll be fine, just want backup." The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her next message. "This sounds shady. At least stay in public view. I'll be in the area just in case." Knowing Zoe had my back made me feel more confident about the meeting. I returned to my renovation planning, but my concentration was broken. What could Evelyn possibly be planning that would make Victor reach out to warn me? At 1:45, I left the house, instructing Miguel and his team to continue working until 5 p.m. The Portland Coffee House was a 15-minute drive, a cozy local spot known for its excellent espresso and quiet atmosphere, a good choice for a discreet conversation. I arrived 5 minutes early, deliberately choosing a table with a clear view of both the entrance and the back corner where Victor had said he'd be. He wasn't there yet, so I ordered a latte and waited, scanning each person who entered. At precisely 2 p.m., a tall man with silver-streaked dark hair walked in. He looked around briefly before heading to the back corner booth. That had to be Victor. I waited a moment, observing him as he settled in and ordered from the server. He seemed nervous, repeatedly checking his watch and glancing toward the door. Taking my coffee, I approached his table. "Victor Hayes?" He looked up, relief washing over his features. "Rachel, thank you for coming." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Please." I sat, studying him more closely. He was handsome, In a distinguished way, probably in his mid-50s, with intelligent eyes and well-manicured hands. It was easy to see what might have attracted Evelyn. "You said Evelyn is planning something," I prompted, not interested in small talk. Victor nodded, glancing around before leaning in. "First, I want to apologize for my role in all this, the affair with Evelyn. It was a mistake. One I deeply regret." "I'm not here for your confession," I said firmly. "What's Evelyn planning?" He took a deep breath. "She's going to burn down your house." I stared at him, certain I had misheard. "Excuse me?" "The house, your house," he clarified. "She's planning to destroy it. She says if she can't have it, no one can, especially not you." "That's insane," I said, even as a cold dread settled in my stomach. It was insane, yes, but it also sounded exactly like something Evelyn might do. "How do you know this?" "She called me last night, hysterical after the court ruling, said she'd lost everything. Her husband, her son, her dignity. But she wasn't going to let you win. She talked about having gasoline already, how she knew when the house would be empty." My mind raced. The renovation team was there now, but they'd be leaving at 5 p.m. I'd planned to pick up dinner and work late at my apartment, returning to the house tomorrow morning. "Did she say when?" I asked, my mouth dry. Victor shook his head. "No specific time. Just that it would be soon. Tonight? Maybe tomorrow." "Why are you telling me this? Aren't you on her side?" He sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "Evelyn and I. It's complicated. We've known each other for years, since before she married Walter. The affair was on and off, never serious, at least not to me. But after everything that happened with you and Daniel, she's changed. She's always been manipulative, but now she's destructive, dangerous." "You should be telling this to the police, not me," I said. "With what evidence?" Victor countered. "A phone call? My word against hers? Evelyn would deny everything. Say I was trying to slander her out of jealousy or revenge." He had a point. Without proof, it would be difficult to get the police to take the threat seriously. "Why warn me at all?" I asked. "Why not just let her do it?" Victor's expression hardened. "Because I'm not a monster, Mrs. Wilson. I may have made mistakes, but I draw the line at arson, at putting lives in danger." I believed him, I realized with some surprise. His concern seemed genuine, his discomfort at being involved in Evelyn's schemes evident in the tight set of his shoulders. "What do you suggest I do?" I asked. "Don't leave the house unattended. Install security cameras. Document everything." He hesitated. "And maybe consider reaching out to Daniel. Evelyn still listens to him to some extent. He might be able to talk her down." The idea of involving Daniel made me uncomfortable. We'd reached a fragile peace, and I wasn't eager to drag him back into conflict with his mother, especially over something that might not even happen. "Thank you for the warning," I said, standing. "I'll take precautions." Victor nodded, relief evident in his expression. "I hope I'm wrong. I hope she was just ranting and won't actually go through with it. But it's Evelyn," I finished for him, "and she doesn't give up easily." As I walked back to my car, I called Zoe, explaining Victor's warning. "That's a serious allegation," she said, her lawyer voice in full effect. "Do you think he's telling the truth?" "Unfortunately, yes." I unlocked my car, sliding into the driver's seat. It sounds exactly like something Evelyn would do if she felt cornered. "We should call the police," Zoe insisted. "And tell them..." "What? That my ex-mother-in-law's lover says she's planning to commit arson? With no proof?" I sighed, frustration building. "They'll think I'm just trying to cause more trouble for her after winning the court case." "Then what's your plan?" I thought for a moment. I'll stay at the house tonight instead of my apartment. I'll ask Miguel to install the security system immediately rather than next week, and I'll call a security company to have someone patrol overnight for the next few days, just to be safe. I don't like you staying there alone, Zoe said. Let me come over. We can have a sleepover, keep watch together. The offer was tempting. Don't you have that big deposition tomorrow? It's not until 11 a.m. I can still make it if I leave your place early. Her tone brooked no argument. I'm coming over, with wine and pizza and my baseball bat from college. I laughed despite the tension. Fine, but I get the bat if Evelyn shows up with gasoline. By the time I returned to the house, Miguel and his team had made impressive progress. The wallpaper was completely gone from the living room and dining area, the sage green paint touched, up where needed. The kitchen had been stripped to its bones, ready for the new cabinets that would arrive next week. I pulled Miguel aside, explaining that I needed the security system installed immediately. To his credit, he didn't ask questions, simply nodded and made a call to his electrician. We can have cameras up by tonight, he assured me. Basic system at first, then we'll upgrade when the specialized equipment comes in next week. That's perfect, I said, relief coursing through me. And one more thing, I'll be staying here tonight, so if you could make sure the master bathroom is functional before you leave. Already done, he confirmed. We didn't touch the plumbing in there. You'll be roughing it with no kitchen. But the bathroom works fine. By 6 p.m., the work crew had departed, leaving me alone in the half-renovated house. The security cameras were in place. 4 exterior cameras covering all approaches to the house, plus 1 in the main hallway. The feed went directly to an app on my phone, allowing me to monitor any activity from anywhere. I walked through the empty rooms, taking stock of the progress. Without Evelyn's heavy furniture and oppressive decorations, the house already felt more like mine again. The spaces were open, waiting to be filled with light and life and new memories untainted by the past. Zoe arrived at 7, balancing a pizza box and a bottle of wine. "Security detail reporting for duty," she announced, kicking the door closed behind her. "Where should I set up command central?" I laughed, leading her to the living room where I'd arranged a makeshift seating area with cushions and blankets on the floor. Welcome to Casa Wilson, Renovation Edition. No furniture, but plenty of floor space. Very bohemian, Zoe approved, setting down her burdens. Are those the security camera feeds? She nodded toward my laptop, which was displaying 4 split-screen views of the exterior. Yep, all quiet so far. I've also got a security patrol driving by every hour until morning. You're not messing around, Zoe observed, pouring wine into the plastic cups I'd provided. Good. Evelyn doesn't strike me as the type to make idle threats. We settled on the cushions, eating pizza and watching the security feeds, conversation flowing easily between topics serious and light. As the evening wore on, I found myself relaxing despite the circumstances. Even if Evelyn was planning something, I was prepared. I wasn't alone. Around 11 p.m., one of the cameras picked up movement, a car driving slowly past the house. We both tensed, watching as it continued down the street and disappeared from view. Probably just a neighbor, Zoe said, though she didn't sound convinced. 20 minutes later, the same car appeared again, this time stopping briefly across the street, before continuing on. That's not a neighbor, I said, grabbing my phone. I'm calling the security company. The patrol car arrived within minutes, circling the block but finding no sign of the suspicious vehicle. The security guard assured us he'd maintain a closer watch for the rest of the night. We took turns sleeping, one of us always awake and monitoring the cameras. Nothing else unusual happened, and by morning, I was beginning to wonder if Victor's warning had been exaggerated, or if our precautions had deterred Evelyn from whatever she might have been planning. Zoe left for her deposition at 9 a.m., extracting a promise from me to call if anything strange occurred. The renovation team arrived shortly after, and work resumed on transforming the house. Around noon, my phone rang. Daniel. "Rachel?" he said, without preamble. "Have you seen my mother?" My heart rate spiked. "No. Why?" "She's missing. Dad went to her house this morning to pick up some financial documents and she wasn't there. Her car's gone. Her phone's going straight to voicemail." "Maybe she just went shopping," I suggested, though I knew it wasn't that simple. Not after Victor's warning. "For 15 hours?" Daniel's voice was tense. "She missed her standing hair appointment this morning." "Rachel, she never misses that." I closed my eyes, dread pooling in my stomach. "Daniel, there's something you should know." I explained everything to Daniel. Victor's warning, the suspicious car circling the house, the security measures I'd put in place. There was a long silence on the other end of the line when I finished. "I can't believe she would go this far," he finally said, his voice hollow. "Actually, that's not true. I can believe it, and that's the worst part." "Do you have any idea where she might be?" I asked. "I've checked all the usual places, her sister's house, her favorite restaurants, the country club." He sighed heavily. "I've called everyone I can think of. What about Victor?" "I'd rather not involve him," Daniel said stiffly. I could hear the strain in his voice. Despite everything, it was still difficult for him to acknowledge his mother's affair. "He might know where she is," I pointed out, gently. "And if she really is planning something drastic." "You're right," he conceded. "Do you have his number?" I gave him the contact information from my recent call log, then made a decision. "I'm coming to help you look for her." "What? No, Rachel, you don't need to—" "Daniel," I interrupted firmly. "If Evelyn is planning to burn down my house, I'm not going to sit around waiting for it to happen. I'd rather find her first." He was quiet for a moment. "Okay, I'm at her house now. Do you remember the address?" Of course. The few times I'd visited Evelyn's pristine colonial in the West Hills had been etched into my memory, each visit more uncomfortable than the last. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. I quickly explained the situation to Miguel, asking him to stay alert and call me immediately if anyone suspicious approached the property. Then I grabbed my purse and headed to my car. The drive to Evelyn's house took me through some of Portland's most exclusive neighborhoods, winding roads lined with elegant homes set back behind manicured lawns. Evelyn's house, when I arrived, looked exactly as I remembered it. Imposing, perfectly maintained, with not a flower out of place in the formal garden. Daniel was waiting on the front porch, his expression drawn with worry. Despite everything, my heart gave a small, traitorous leap at the sight of him. He looked tired but handsome in jeans and a navy sweater, his dark hair slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. "Thanks for coming," he said as I approached. "I know this isn't your problem anymore." "If she's planning to burn down my house, it's definitely my problem," I replied, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Any word?" He shook his head. I tried Victor. No answer. "Have you called the police?" "Not yet. She's only been gone overnight. They won't consider her officially missing for at least 24 hours. I frowned. "But with the arson threat." "I have no proof," Daniel reminded me. "Just a secondhand warning from Victor, who isn't even answering his phone now." He had a point. Without evidence, the police were unlikely to take immediate action. "Let's go inside," I suggested. "Maybe there's something in the house that could tell us where she went." Daniel hesitated. "I'm not sure we should." "Do you have a key?" I asked. He nodded, pulling a set of keys from his pocket. "Dad gave me his spare when we realized she was missing." "Then we're not breaking in," I reasoned. "We're concerned family members checking on a potentially unstable relative." The corner of his mouth lifted in a small smile. "You always were good at finding loopholes." He unlocked the front door, and we stepped into Evelyn's immaculate foyer. The house was eerily silent, every surface gleaming with polish, every object perfectly aligned. It looked like a museum rather than a home. Beautiful, but untouchable. "Where should we start?" I asked, feeling strangely like an intruder despite our legitimate concerns. "Her office, maybe?" Daniel suggested. "She keeps her calendar there, and her personal laptop." He led the way down the hallway to a room I'd never been allowed to enter during my marriage, Evelyn's private office. The space was as perfectionist as the rest of the house. A massive cherry wood desk dominated the center, with built-in bookshelves along one wall and a seating area by the window. Everything was arranged with mathematical precision, from the perfectly aligned desk accessories to the color-coded files in the cabinet. "Check the calendar first," I said, moving toward the desk. The leather-bound planner was centered precisely on the blotter. I opened it to the current week, scanning. The neat entries in Evelyn's distinctive handwriting. Hair appointment, bridge game, lunch with someone named Caroline. All normal activities, none providing any clue to her current whereabouts. Daniel was examining her laptop. "It's password protected," he said with a frown. "Try her birthday," I suggested. "Or yours." He typed in several combinations, shaking his head after each attempt. No luck. I continued searching the office, opening drawers and flipping through files. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I reached the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. Inside was a manila folder labeled simply, "Property." "Daniel," I called, pulling out the folder. "Look at this." He joined me as I spread the contents across the desk. Inside were documents related to various properties, not just the house I now owned, but several others as well. Rental agreements, mortgage statements, property tax assessments. "I didn't know she owned all these," Daniel said, frowning as he examined the papers. "Neither did I." I sorted through the documents, trying to make sense of them. "Look at this. 1. It's for a cabin at Matt Hood." Daniel's eyes widened. "I remember that place. We used to go there when I was a kid, but I thought Dad sold it years ago." According to this, it's still in Evelyn's name. I held up the property tax statement dated just 3 months earlier. "And she's been paying the utilities." "You think she might be there?" Daniel asked, already reaching for his phone. "It's worth checking." I gathered the papers, taking a photo of the address with my phone. "Do you know how to get there?" He nodded. "It's about an hour and a half from Portland, up near Government Camp. I haven't been there in at least 15 years, but I think I can find it." "Let's go," I said, already heading for the door. "We can take my car." Daniel hesitated. "Shouldn't we call the police now? If we're right about where she is and what she's planning." "And tell them what?" "That we suspect my former mother-in-law might be planning arson from a cabin we just discovered she owns?" I shook my head. "Let's check it out first. If she's there, we can try to talk to her. If we find any actual evidence of her plans, then we call the police." He didn't look entirely convinced, but he followed me out to my car. As we settled in for the drive, to Matt Hood, an awkward silence fell between us. It had been months since we'd spent any time alone together, and the circumstances were hardly conducive to casual conversation. "Thank you," Daniel said suddenly as we merged onto the highway. "For helping with this. You didn't have to." I kept my eyes on the road. "I'm not doing it for Evelyn." "I know." He looked out the window at the city giving way to suburbs, then to forest as we headed east toward the mountain. "Still, after everything that happened, I wouldn't have blamed you for telling me to handle my mother on my own." "That's what got us into this mess in the first place," I pointed out, more sharply than I intended. "You handling your mother on your own." He flinched slightly, but didn't argue. "You're right." We drove in silence for several miles, the tension in the car palpable. Finally, I sighed. "I'm sorry. That wasn't fair." "No, it was completely fair," Daniel said quietly. I failed you, Rachel. I know that. I glanced at him, surprised by the raw honesty in his voice. It wasn't all your fault. Evelyn is… Well, she's Evelyn. She's had decades to perfect her manipulation techniques. That doesn't excuse my choices. He turned to face me, his expression earnest. I've been thinking a lot about it in therapy, about why I couldn't stand up to her, why I always gave in. The therapist says it's a pattern that started in childhood. Mom's approval was conditional on me doing exactly what she wanted. I learned early that keeping the peace was easier than asserting myself. I nodded slowly, remembering how Daniel would tense up whenever Evelyn called, how he'd agree to whatever she asked just to end the conversation faster. That makes sense, but understanding why doesn't change what happened. I know. He looked back at the road stretching before us. I'm not trying to win you back, Rachel. That ship has sailed, and I know it's my fault. I want you to know that I'm working on it, on being stronger, on setting boundaries. I don't want to be that person anymore. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, pride in his growth, sadness for what might have been, a lingering anger that it had taken, losing everything for him to finally make these changes. I'm glad, I said simply. You deserve better than being under her thumb for the rest of your life. The conversation shifted to more practical matters as we approached Ment Hood. Daniel directed me off the main highway onto increasingly narrow roads that wound through dense forest. Finally, we turned onto a gravel drive barely wide enough for my car. This is it, Daniel said as a small cabin came into view. This is the place. The cabin was rustic but well-maintained, with a wide porch and large windows facing the mountain. Parked in front was a familiar black Lexus, Evelyn's car. She's here, I whispered, relief and apprehension flooding through me in equal measure. Daniel nodded grimly. Now what? Now we talk to her, I said, turning off the engine. Try to understand what she's planning and stop her before she does something that lands her in prison. And if she won't listen, I met his gaze steadily. Then we call the police and let them handle it. We approached the cabin cautiously. There was no movement visible through the windows. No sound except for birds in the surrounding trees. Daniel knocked on the door, the sound echoing in the stillness. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Mom? It's Daniel. Are you in there? Still nothing. He tried the door handle, locked. There's a spare key, he said, feeling along the top of the door frame. Dad always kept one. Here it is. The small brass key turned easily in the lock. Daniel pushed the door open, calling out once more. Mom? It's me. Are you okay? We stepped into the cabin's main room, a combined living area and kitchen, with vaulted ceilings and a stone fireplace. The space was clean but clearly hadn't been used much recently. A layer of dust covered most surfaces, and the furniture was draped with protective covers. It doesn't look like she's been here, I said, glancing around. Are you sure this is the right cabin? Positive, Daniel confirmed, and that's definitely her car outside. A sound from the back of the cabin made us both freeze, a soft thump, like something being set down. Daniel moved toward the narrow hallway that presumably led to bedrooms. Mom? He called again. It's Daniel. Rachel's with me. We're worried about you. A door at the end of the hall opened, and Evelyn emerged. She looked nothing like the immaculate, commanding woman I remembered. Her hair was disheveled, her expensive clothes wrinkled as if she'd slept in them. But most alarming was her expression, a strange mix of surprise, anger, and something that looked almost like relief. Daniel? She said, her voice hoarse. What are you doing here? Looking for you, he replied, taking a step toward her. Everyone's worried. You disappeared without telling anyone where you were going. Her gaze shifted to me, hardening instantly. And you brought her? To my private retreat? Evelyn, I said as calmly as I could manage, we need to talk about what you're planning. She drew herself up, some of her old imperial manner returning. I have no idea what you're talking about. Victor told me, I said, watching her carefully. About the house, about the gasoline. A flicker of something, guilt, fear, crossed her face before she composed herself. Victor doesn't know anything. He's lying, trying to cause trouble because I ended things with him. Daniel flinched slightly at the casual reference to her affair, but pressed on. Mom, this is serious. If you're planning to burn down Rachel's house... It's not her house, Evelyn snapped, her calm facade cracking. It was supposed to be ours, yours and mine. A place where family could always be together. And she ruined it, just like she ruined everything else. The house was never yours, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. It was mine and Daniel's, and now it's mine alone, legally, by court order. Evelyn laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that held no humor. Courts can be wrong, paperwork can burn, accidents happen all the time. A chill ran through me at her words, at the cold calculation in her eyes. Is that what you're planning? An accident? She didn't answer directly, instead walking past us into the main room. Why are you really here, Rachel? To gloat? To rub it in that you've taken everything from me? I haven't taken anything from you, I replied, following her. Your choices cost you your marriage. Your manipulation cost you your relationship with Daniel. I was just collateral damage in the war you've been waging against anyone who threatens your control. Evelyn whirled to face me, eyes flashing with fury. You have no idea what you're talking about. I built my entire life around my family, around protecting them, providing for them, controlling them, I interrupted. There's a difference, Evelyn. Love doesn't demand obedience. It doesn't punish independence. Stop it, Daniel said, his voice firm as he moved between us. Both of you. Mom, we didn't come here to argue. We came because we're concerned about what you might do. Evelyn's expression softened slightly as she looked at her son. Daniel, darling, you don't need to worry about me. I'm just taking some time to think, that's all. To think about burning down my house? I asked bluntly. Her eyes flashed to mine, cold and hard. I don't know what Victor told you, but he's mistaken. Then what's this? Daniel asked, pointing to a duffel bag partially visible behind the sofa. He moved to it before Evelyn could react, unzipping it to reveal several containers of gasoline, rags, and a lighter. The color drained from Evelyn's face. That's for the generator, she stammered. The power goes out up here sometimes. Mom, stop lying, Daniel said, his voice breaking slightly. Please, just tell us the truth. For a long moment, Evelyn stood frozen, looking from Daniel to me and back again. Then, like a puppet whose strings had been cut, she sank onto the sofa, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Fine, she whispered. Yes, I was planning to burn it down. The house, her precious house that she cares about more than she ever cared about you. That's not true, I said, but she continued as if I hadn't spoken. Do you know what it feels like, Daniel? To lose everything? Your father left me. You chose her. My reputation is in shambles. Everyone knows about Victor now. Everyone's whispering behind my back. Her voice rose, becoming more frantic. I have nothing left. Nothing. And she gets to walk away with the house, with her life intact, with everything I should have had. Daniel knelt in front of his mother, taking her hands in his. Mom, listen to me. This isn't the answer. Burning down the house won't fix anything. It will only make things worse, much worse. You could go to prison. I don't care, she said, though her voice wavered. What do I have to lose now? Me, Daniel said simply. You'd lose me for good. Because I couldn't forgive this, Mom. I couldn't stand by you if you did something so destructive, so dangerous. Tears filled Evelyn's eyes. You've already chosen her over me. This isn't about choosing sides, he said gently. This is about right and wrong. What you're planning is wrong, Mom. Deep down, you know that. I watched this exchange with a strange detachment, as if I were observing a scene in a play, rather than a moment that could determine whether my home survived or burned to ashes. The Evelyn before me now, tear-stained, disheveled, desperate, was almost unrecognizable from the polished, controlling woman who had made my life miserable for years. Evelyn, I said softly, surprising myself with the lack of anger in my voice. I understand feeling like you've lost everything. After you took over our house, after Daniel signed it over to you. I felt that way too. Like my whole world had been stolen from me. She looked up at me, wary but listening. But destroying things doesn't help, I continued. It just creates more loss, more pain, and you'd be the one to suffer most for it. Why do you even care? Mishi asked, genuine confusion in her voice. You should want me in prison after what I did to you. I considered this, searching for the honest answer. Because burning down my house won't just hurt me. It could hurt the workers renovating it, the neighbors, firefighters who would have to risk their lives to put it out. And it would devastate Daniel. Haven't we all been through enough? Evelyn looked at her son, who still knelt before her, holding her hands. Something in her expression shifted, the cold calculation giving way to uncertainty, and finally to a weary resignation. I wasn't really going to do it, she said, though none of us believed her. I just wanted to feel like I had some control back, like I could still affect your life somehow. You will always affect my life, Mom, Daniel said gently. You're my mother, but this isn't the way. She nodded slowly, tears tracking down her cheeks. I'm so tired, Daniel. I don't know what to do anymore. Everything's falling apart. Let us help you, he said. Let's start by getting rid of these. He gestured to the gasoline containers. And then maybe we should talk about getting you some professional support. To my surprise, Evelyn didn't argue. She just nodded again, looking suddenly much older and smaller than the formidable woman who had terrorized me for years. Daniel looked at me over his mother's bowed head, gratitude and apology in his eyes. I nodded slightly, understanding passing between us without words. We would handle this together, not for the sake of our failed marriage, but because it was the right thing to do. While Daniel comforted his mother, I stepped outside to call Walter, explaining what we'd found and where we were. He promised to come immediately, relief evident in his voice despite the seriousness of the situation. Then I called Zoe, updating her briefly and assuring her that the immediate danger seemed to have passed. I'm not sure what happens next, I admitted. Legally, I mean. She was planning a crime, but she didn't actually commit it. Intent matters, Zoe said, her lawyer voice in full effect. But so does getting her the help she obviously needs. Let's talk options when you're back in Portland. By the time Walter arrived at the cabin 2 hours later, we had disposed of the gasoline and packed up Evelyn's overnight bag. She hadn't said much, sitting quietly on the sofa while Daniel made coffee and I kept a discreet watch to ensure she didn't try to leave. Walter's expression when he saw his estranged wife was complicated. Concern mingled with wariness, lingering affection tempered by the memory of betrayal. Evelyn, he said simply, are you okay? She looked up at him, her usual armor completely stripped away. No, she admitted, the word seemingly costing her a great effort. I'm not okay at all. He nodded, as if this was exactly what he'd expected to hear. I've made some calls. There's a private treatment facility in Bend that can take you tomorrow. Residential therapy program? Very discreet. You want to lock me up? Anger flashed in her eyes, a glimpse of the old Evelyn. I want to get you help, Walter corrected gently. The kind of help I should have insisted on years ago, instead of enabling your worst instincts because it was easier than confronting them. Evelyn looked from Walter to Daniel, then finally to me. Whatever she saw in our faces must have conveyed the seriousness of the situation, because the fight seemed to drain out of her again. "Fine," she said wearily. "Whatever you think is best." The drive back to Portland was tense but peaceful. Walter took Evelyn in his car, while Daniel rode with me. We followed them at a distance, giving father and mother privacy for whatever difficult conversation they needed to have. "Thank you," Daniel said as we wound our way down from the mountain. "For coming with me, for helping diffuse the situation. You didn't have to do any of that." "I know," I said, keeping my eyes on the road. "But it was the right thing to do." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You were amazing with her. Compassionate, even after everything she put you through." I considered this. It's easier to be compassionate when you're not afraid anymore. When I was married to you, Evelyn terrified me because she had the power to damage what mattered most, our relationship. Now, I shrugged. She's just a troubled woman who needs help. "I wish I'd seen it sooner," Daniel said softly. "How troubled she is. How much damage she was doing." "You were too close to see it clearly," I said. "We all have blind spots when it comes to the people who raised us." The conversation drifted to practicalities. What would happen to Evelyn? How long the treatment program might last? Whether charges would be filed. By mutual unspoken agreement, we avoided any topic that touched too directly on our own relationship, on the wounds that were still healing. When we reached Portland, I drove directly to Walter's new apartment, where he would keep Evelyn overnight, before taking her to the treatment facility the next day. As we pulled up behind Walter's car, Daniel turned to me. "Will you be okay? At the house, I mean. Knowing what almost happened." "I'll be fine," I assured him. "The security system is in place, and the renovation team will be there all day tomorrow. Besides," I added with a small smile, "the threat has been neutralized, at least for now." He nodded, hesitating before opening the car door. "Rachel, there's so much I want to say to you, but I don't know where to start." "You don't need to say anything," I told him. "We're okay, Daniel. Not the way we were, but okay. And that's enough for now." Relief washed over his features. "Thank you," he said simply, then got out of the car. I waited until he reached Walter and Evelyn before driving away, heading back to the house that had almost become a casualty in Evelyn's desperate bid for control. As I drove, I felt a strange lightness, as if a chapter had truly closed. Evelyn would get the help she needed. Daniel was finding his strength. Walter was building a new life, and I was reclaiming mine, piece by piece, room by room. 3 months passed in a blur of renovation decisions, paint samples, and furniture. Deliveries. My house transformed day by day, shedding every trace of Evelyn's heavy-handed decorating and returning to the light, airy space I had originally designed. Miguel and his team worked miracles, restoring what could be saved and rebuilding what couldn't. The kitchen emerged as the heart of the home once again, with clean white cabinetry, marble countertops, and the restored farmhouse sink I'd found at a salvage yard years ago. The living room walls returned to their soothing sage green, complemented by natural wood tones and strategic pops of color in artwork and throw pillows. My grandmother's dining table resumed its rightful place, refinished to highlight the character, in its reclaimed wood. Each change felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, washing away the darkness of the past months and replacing it with hope for the future. Word about my renovation spread through Portland's design community. A local magazine approached me about featuring the transformation in their Phoenix Rising series about homes that had undergone dramatic revivals. The irony wasn't lost on me. my professional triumph emerging from personal devastation. On a crisp fall morning, almost exactly a year after Evelyn had first redecorated my house in my absence, I stood in my completed kitchen, savoring a cup of coffee and the sense of peace that had finally settled over the space. The magazine photo shoot was scheduled for later that day, and I had spent the previous evening making sure every detail was perfect. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Nervous about the big reveal today?" I smiled, typing back, "A little. But mostly excited. You still coming for the celebratory dinner afterward?" "Wouldn't miss it," she replied. "Jason's bringing the wine." Jason, Zoe's new boyfriend, a landscape architect she'd met through one of my renovation clients. They'd been dating for 2 months, and I'd never seen my friend so happy. Another positive change born from the chaos of the past year. The doorbell rang precisely at 10 o'clock. I opened it to find Caroline, the magazine's editor, accompanied by a photographer and his assistant. "Rachel, the house looks incredible from the outside," Caroline gushed, air kissing my cheeks. "I can't wait to see what you've done with the interior." I welcomed them in, watching with satisfaction as their eyes widened, taking in the transformed space. "It's stunning," Caroline breathed, turning slowly to absorb the open-concept living area. "And to think this was once stuffed with Victorian furniture and floral wallpaper." I laughed. A temporary detour in the home's evolution. The photo shoot proceeded smoothly, with Caroline interviewing me about my design choices, while the photographer captured images of each room. I found myself speaking candidly about the personal journey behind the renovation. "In many ways, this house reflects my own transformation," I admitted as we settled in the sunroom for the final part of the interview. We both endured a period of being smothered under someone else's vision, and we both emerged stronger and more authentic. Caroline nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly the angle I want for the piece. Not just a design triumph, but a personal one." Readers connect with stories of resilience. After they left, promising the feature would run in next month's issue, I wandered through the quiet house, still marveling at how far it and I had come. My phone buzzed again, this time with an unfamiliar number. "Rachel Wilson? This is Dr. Lydia Mercer from Cascade Wellness Center." My breath caught. Cascade was the treatment facility where Evelyn had been staying for the past 3 months. "Yes, this is Rachel," I confirmed, my voice steady despite the sudden pounding of my heart. "I'm calling on behalf of Evelyn Wilson. She's completed our intensive treatment program and, as part of her ongoing therapy, has expressed a desire to make amends to those she's harmed. She's asked if you would be willing to meet with her." I sank onto the window seat, momentarily speechless. After everything that had happened, the thought of facing Evelyn again sent a surge of complicated emotions through me. Apprehension, lingering anger, but also curiosity. What could she possibly say to make amends for the destruction she'd nearly caused? "Mrs. Wilson, are you still there?" "Yes, sorry," I said, gathering my thoughts. "I'm just surprised." "I understand." Dr. Mercer's voice was compassionate but professional. "This is completely your choice. Many people in your position would decline, and that's perfectly acceptable." "What exactly would this meeting involve?" I asked. "It would be a structured session here at the center, with me facilitating. Evelyn would share what she's learned in treatment and offer her apology, but there's no expectation that you forgive her or maintain any relationship afterward. It's simply an opportunity for closure, if you feel it would be beneficial." Closure. The word resonated with me. Despite everything that had happened at the cabin, despite knowing Evelyn was getting help, there was still an unresolved tension whenever I thought about her. Perhaps this was an opportunity to truly close that chapter. "When would this happen?" I asked. "Evelyn will be transitioning to outpatient treatment next week. We could schedule something for the following Tuesday, if that works for you." I checked my calendar. Tuesday morning would be fine. Excellent. 10 o'clock? When I confirmed, Dr. Mercer continued. And Rachel, this is a significant step in Evelyn's recovery, but please remember that you're under no obligation to respond in any particular way. Your feelings, whatever they may be, are valid. After ending the call, I sat for a long time, watching the autumn leaves dance across my garden. Was I making a mistake by agreeing to see Evelyn? Or was this an opportunity to finally put the past behind me? I decided not to mention the upcoming meeting to anyone. Not Zoe, not Walter, and especially not Daniel. This was something I needed to do on my own terms, without outside opinions influencing my approach. The week passed quickly, filled with client meetings and final preparations for the magazine feature. Before I knew it, Tuesday morning arrived, bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a simple gray dress with a blue scarf. Professional, but not intimidating, neither a power outfit nor one that suggested vulnerability. Cascade Wellness Center was located on a wooded campus just outside Portland. The main building, with its walls of windows and natural stone accents, looked more like a high-end retreat than a treatment facility. A receptionist greeted me warmly and directed me to Dr. Mercer's office on the second floor. The doctor was waiting for me, a tall woman with silver-streaked dark hair and kind eyes behind stylish glasses. "Rachel, welcome," she said, shaking my hand. "How are you feeling about this meeting?" "Nervous," I admitted, "but ready, I think." She nodded approvingly. "That's a healthy response. Evelyn is waiting in our meeting room. She's nervous too, which is a good sign. It indicates she understands the significance of this interaction." Dr. Mercer led me down a hallway to a comfortable room furnished with a round table and several chairs. Warm lighting and plants created an atmosphere that was neither clinical nor overly casual. And there was Evelyn. I almost didn't recognize her at first. Gone was the perfectly coiffed hair, the impeccable designer outfit, the imperious posture. This Evelyn wore simple slacks and a blue sweater, her hair cut in a practical bob that had more gray showing than I remembered. She looked smaller somehow, less commanding, but also more authentic. She stood as I entered, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Rachel," she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "Thank you for coming." Dr. Mercer indicated where we should sit, taking a position that allowed her to observe both of us. "Evelyn has been preparing for this meeting as part of her therapeutic process," she explained to me. "She understands that this is about expressing her accountability, not seeking forgiveness or reconciliation." Evelyn nodded, her eyes meeting mine briefly before dropping to her hands. "I've written some things I want to say, if that's all right." When I nodded, she extracted a folded paper from her pocket and smoothed it on the table. "Rachel," she began, her voice slightly unsteady. "For most of my life, I've measured my worth by how much control I had over the people and circumstances around me. My house had to be perfect. My marriage had to appear flawless. And my son. My son had to remain utterly loyal to me above all others." She paused, taking a deep breath. "When Daniel married you, I saw it as a threat to that control. Instead of welcoming you as an addition to our family, I viewed you as competition, someone who might take him away from me." I listened silently, watching the woman who had once seemed so formidable struggle to maintain her composure. "My behavior toward you was inexcusable," she continued. "The wedding dress incident, the constant criticism, the boundary violations, and then the house." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "I deliberately took advantage of your absence to impose my will on your space, to assert control, to send the message that I could still influence Daniel, and by extension, you. And when that didn't work," I said quietly, "you decided to destroy it completely." She flinched, but nodded. "Yes. In my distorted thinking, I convinced myself that if I couldn't possess the house, possess that part of Daniel's life, then no one should have it. It was vengeful, dangerous, and deeply wrong. Dr. Mercer interjected gently. Evelyn, can you share what you've learned about the roots of these behaviors? Evelyn's hands trembled slightly as she referred to her notes again. My need for control stems from deep insecurity and fear of abandonment. My own mother was highly critical and withholding of affection. I learned early that perfection was the price of love, and I imposed that same condition on everyone around me, especially Daniel. She looked at me again. I see now how destructive that pattern was, how it hurt Walter, damaged Daniel's ability to set healthy boundaries, and caused you immense pain. I was surprised by the genuine insight in her words. This wasn't the performative contrition I had half expected. This was someone who had done serious introspective work. The hardest part, Evelyn continued, has been accepting that I can't undo the harm I've caused. I can't go back and be the mother-in-law who welcomed you warmly, who respected your home and marriage. All I can do is acknowledge what I did wrong and commit to change going forward. She folded her hands on the table, her rings noticeably absent. I am deeply sorry, Rachel, for everything I put you through, for trying to control your home, for undermining your marriage, for planning to destroy your property. You deserved none of it. The room fell silent when she finished speaking. Dr. Mercer turned to me. Rachel, would you like to respond? There's no right or wrong way to do so. I took my time, processing Evelyn's apology. It was more sincere than I had anticipated, more self-aware. The woman sitting across from me was not the same one who had stormed through my life, leaving destruction in her wake. Thank you for your apology, I said finally. I appreciate your honesty and the work you've obviously done in therapy. Evelyn nodded, waiting for more. I want you to know, I continued carefully, that I have rebuilt my life. My house is completely restored, better than before, actually. My design business is thriving. I'm happy, Evelyn, despite everything that happened. I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, not resentment, as I might have expected from the old Evelyn, but perhaps a quiet acknowledgement. I don't hate you, I added, surprising myself, with the truth of it. I did for a while, but that was exhausting. Now I just want to move forward with my life, and I hope you can do the same with yours. Dr. Mercer nodded encouragingly. Is there anything specific you'd like from Evelyn? Going forward, Rachel? Any boundaries you'd like to establish? I considered this. I think the restraining order should remain in place for now, I said. Not because I feel physically threatened anymore, but because I believe we both need space to continue healing, separately. I agree, Evelyn said quietly. And I want you to know I'll respect that completely. Dr. Mercer made a note. And what about indirect contact through Walter or Daniel? I have no objection to hearing updates about your progress, I said to Evelyn. But I'd prefer any necessary communication go through Walter, not Daniel. He's worked hard to establish healthier boundaries with you, and I don't want to complicate that. Evelyn nodded, a flash of sadness crossing her features. I understand. I'm learning to let him be an independent adult. It's difficult, but necessary. The session continued for another 20 minutes, with Dr. Mercer guiding us through clarifying expectations and discussing potential future interactions. By the end, I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. Not forgiveness exactly, but a release from the anger that had been taking up space in my life. As we prepared to leave, Evelyn hesitated, then reached into her bag. I have something for you, she said, withdrawing a small, wrapped package. Dr. Mercer approved it. It's not an attempt to overstep. I accepted the package cautiously. What is it? Open it when you're ready, she said simply. It's part of my amends. Dr. Mercer walked me to the reception area afterward. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Surprisingly okay," I replied. "It wasn't as difficult as I expected." "Evelyn has made tremendous progress," the doctor confirmed, "though she still has significant work to do, particularly in her relationships with Walter and Daniel." "Will they be having sessions like this too?" Dr. Mercer nodded. "Walter has already participated in several family therapy sessions. Daniel is scheduled for his first one next week. The road to rebuilding trust is long, but they've all taken important first steps." As I drove home, Evelyn's package sat on the passenger seat, a tangible reminder of the morning's unexpected developments. I wasn't ready to open it yet, preferring to let the emotions of the meeting settle first. When I arrived home, I found a delivery van parked outside. The driver was unloading a large, flat package wrapped in protective padding. "Rachel Wilson?" he called as I approached. "Delivery from Walter Wilson." Curious, I signed for the package and directed the driver to bring it into the living room. After he left, I carefully removed the padding to reveal a painting. Not just any painting, but a beautiful watercolor of the Oregon coast at sunset, remarkably similar to my grandmother's work. My phone rang almost immediately. "Did it arrive?" Walter asked when I answered. "Just now," I said, still admiring the piece. "Walter, it's beautiful, but I don't understand. Why?" "Turn it over," he suggested. I did as he instructed, finding a small brass plaque on the back of the frame. It read, "Helen Wilson, 1985, Cannon Beach at sunset." "This is my grandmother's painting," I breathed. "The original. But how? I have it hanging above my fireplace." "Right now?" Walter chuckled. "No, you have a very good reproduction hanging above your fireplace. When Evelyn redecorated your house, she didn't just put your grandmother's painting in the garage. She had it taken to a high-end art restorer who specializes in watercolors. The painting had some water damage in one corner that you might not have even noticed." I walked to the fireplace, examining the painting that had been hanging there since I reclaimed the house. Now that I knew what to look for, I could see the subtle differences between this reproduction and the original now sitting in my living room. "But why would she do that?" I asked, confused. "Evelyn never liked my grandmother's painting." "Actually, she did," Walter said. "She has excellent taste in art, despite her questionable taste in furniture. She thought the painting was beautiful, but didn't fit with her vision for the house, so she had it restored and kept it in storage." I was silent, trying to reconcile this information with my understanding of Evelyn. "She asked me to return it to you," Walter continued. "Said it was important that you have the original back. It was supposed to be part of her making amends." "She gave me a package today," I said, glancing at the still unwrapped gift on my table. "But it was small, not painting-sized." "That's something else then," Walter said. "I just wanted to make sure the painting arrived safely." After thanking him, I hung up and approached Evelyn's package with renewed curiosity. Carefully unwrapping it, I found a small, leather-bound book. Opening the cover, I recognized Evelyn's distinctive handwriting filling the pages. But this wasn't her financial ledger. It was a recipe book. A note slipped from between the pages. "Rachel, these are the Wilson family recipes going back 3 generations. I should have shared them with you when you married Daniel, but I selfishly kept them as another way to maintain control. The apple cake on page 17 was Daniel's favorite as a child. The pot roast on page 32 is Walter's preferred birthday dinner, and my mother's lemon tart, page 43, won the county fair every year she entered. They belong to you now, regardless of what happened between us. Perhaps someday they'll be part of your family's traditions too, in whatever form that family takes. Evelyn." I traced my fingers over the carefully written recipes, noting the small annotations in the margins. Add extra cinnamon, lower heat for gas ovens, Best with Summer Peaches. This book represented something I had never expected. From Evelyn, a genuine inclusion in family legacy, with no strings attached. Later that evening, as Zoe, Jason, and 2 other friends gathered in my dining room to celebrate the completion of my renovation, I found myself thinking about the day's unexpected gifts. Not just the painting and the recipe book, but the gift of closure, of seeing Evelyn as a flawed, damaged human being rather than the monster who had nearly destroyed my life. "Earth to Rachel," Zoe laughed, waving her wine glass. "You've got that faraway look again. Still nervous about the magazine feature?" I smiled, returning to the present moment. "Not nervous, just reflective. It's been quite a journey to get here." "Well, I think we should toast to that journey," Jason suggested, raising his glass. "To Rachel, who took a house that someone else tried to claim and turned it into a showpiece that's truly her own." "To Rachel," my friends echoed, glasses clinking around the table. As dinner progressed, conversation flowing easily among the people I cherished most, I felt a profound sense of contentment. My home was finally completely mine again. Not just legally, but in spirit. The last traces of Evelyn's invasion had been erased, replaced by choices that reflected my tastes, my personality, my life. After my friends departed, I stood in the quiet living room, now bathed in the soft glow of carefully chosen lamps. My grandmother's original painting hung above the fireplace where it belonged, the watercolor sunset casting a warm light across the serene space. On impulse, I opened Evelyn's recipe book to page 17, Daniel's favorite apple cake. The ingredients were simple, the instructions detailed in Evelyn's meticulous hand. I recognized some of the spice combinations from meals Daniel had occasionally requested during our marriage, dishes I had never quite been able to replicate. Making a sudden decision, I gathered the ingredients from my newly organized kitchen and began to bake. There was something therapeutic about following these long-kept secret recipes, about transforming them from weapons of exclusion into something healing. As the sweet aroma of cinnamon and apples filled the house, I thought about the parallel journeys Evelyn and I had taken over the past year. She had lost everything: her marriage, her relationship with her son, her carefully maintained facade of perfection, and was now painstakingly rebuilding from scratch, examining the flawed foundation that had led to collapse. I, too, had lost what I thought was the structure of my life, only to discover that beneath the rubble lay an opportunity to build something stronger, truer to myself. My renovated home, my expanding design business, my deepened friendships, all had emerged from what initially seemed like total devastation. The timer dinged, and I removed the golden cake from the oven, its perfect dome rising exactly as Evelyn's notes had predicted. Tomorrow, I decided, I would take a slice to Walter. Perhaps one to Daniel as well, delivered to his office downtown. Not as an overture toward reconciliation, that chapter was firmly closed, but as an acknowledgement that we were all moving forward, carrying pieces of our shared past into separate futures. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect Portland autumn day. I wrapped 2 slices of cake carefully, planning to make my deliveries before my first client meeting at 11. As I gathered my keys and purse, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery person holding another package. I opened the door, curious. "Rachel Wilson," the young man confirmed. "Special delivery. Signature required." I signed, for the small envelope, closing the door before opening it. Inside was a simple card with the Cascade Wellness Center logo. The message inside, written in Dr. Mercer's professional hand, was brief but impactful. "Rachel, sometimes in therapy, we encourage patients to create tangible representations of their progress. Evelyn wanted you to have this as a symbol of her commitment to respect your boundaries going forward. Regards, Dr. Lydia Mercer." Beneath the note was a key, the key to my front door that Evelyn had kept after Daniel gave her partial ownership of the house. The key that, despite the court ruling returning the property to me, I had always feared she might still possess. I held it in my palm, feeling its weight, not just as metal, but as a gesture of surrender from a woman who had defined herself by control. Evelyn was literally giving back the access she had taken without permission, acknowledging my right to determine who entered my space. Adding the key to my kitchen drawer, I gathered the cake slices and headed out on my deliveries. Walter was delighted with the unexpected treat, recognizing the recipe immediately. "She would be pleased you're using the book," he said as we shared coffee in his new apartment, a bright, modern space that bore no resemblance to the home he had shared with Evelyn. "She was afraid you might throw it away." "I considered it," I admitted. "But it seemed petty to reject something with actual value just because of its source." Walter nodded approvingly. "That's growth, Rachel, for both of you." Daniel wasn't in his office when I arrived, so I left the cake with his assistant along with a simple note. "Your mother's recipe. Turns out some traditions are worth continuing. Rachel." As I walked back to my car, I felt a sense of completion, of circles closing properly. The house that Evelyn had tried to claim, that I had fought to reclaim, was now truly home again. Not because of court orders or restraining orders, but because I had finally exorcised the emotional ghosts that had lingered there. That evening, I received a text from Daniel. The cake was perfect, exactly how I remember it. "Thank you." I smiled, typing back a simple, "You're welcome." A moment later, my phone buzzed again. "Mom told me about your meeting yesterday. It means a lot to all of us that you agreed to see her." This was trickier territory. I considered my response carefully. "I'm glad she's getting the help she needs. I wish all of you healing on your separate journeys." "That's generous of you," he replied. Then, after a pause, "The house looks amazing in the preview photos Caroline showed me. You've created something beautiful from the chaos." "That's what designers do," I texted back. "We find potential where others might only see problems." "You always were good at that," came his response. "Good night, Rachel." "Good night, Daniel," I typed, then set my phone aside. Standing in my kitchen, my beautifully restored, perfectly functional kitchen, I realized I felt no lingering anger, no smoldering resentment toward the Wilson family. Evelyn had redecorated my house without permission, setting in motion a chain of events that ultimately transformed not just my living space, but my entire life. In the strangest way, her boundary violation had forced me to establish clearer, stronger boundaries than I'd ever had before. Her attempt to control my environment had led me to take fuller control of my career and personal life. Her manipulation had taught me to recognize and resist similar patterns in all my relationships. I sliced another piece of apple cake and carried it to the sunroom, settling into the window seat that overlooked my garden. Soon the magazine would publish their feature, potential clients would call, my business would grow. Life would continue its forward momentum. But for now, in this moment, I savored the sweet taste of a recipe shared across generations, the comfort of a house that was finally, completely my own, and the peace that comes from letting go of what was to embrace what could be. My mother-in-law had redecorated my house while I was away, but what I changed wasn't just her home. It was my understanding of what home truly means, not just walls and furnishings, but boundaries and self-respect. A place where you know exactly who you are and what you deserve. And that, I realized as I watched the sunset paint the sky in colors remarkably similar to my grandmother's painting, was the most beautiful design of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.